got your platoon of people and you move them as like units.
Dude, it's been 9 years. I've just realised that Splatoon is a pun.
Are you serious?
I just thought it was Splat Cartoon, not Platoon. Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the HGO podcast. One of your hosts today, Ethan. Joining me, as always, is my good friend Hunter. How are you doing, Hunter?
Oh, I'm doing just swell.
Felt a bit whack then, not having Kyle in the middle of it then. So I'm like, okay, what do we do here? I don't remember. It's been a little bit since we've done a two-person podcast. Unfortunately, Kyle has unfortunately come to terms with Victorian wasting sickness. I mean, he's just gone, dude. It's over. He has just vanished. It's over. Maybe he'll recover next week. Who knows? But he's not here this week, unfortunately. And I think he passed it on to me because I'm not feeling 100%. So, you know, oh God, who knows what will happen next? But we're here.
It's going to turn us all into holiday spirits.
No, it's a bit late for that. It's It's January, dude. What are we gonna do? But yeah, we're here. We're gonna keep the ball rolling, dude. We're just keeping it going until we're still waiting for that. Where's that Switch 2 reveal, Hunter? I'm still waiting. Am I right? Am I aging the up? This would be funny now if it happens beforehand, right? We have to push this episode forward.
Yeah.
Imagine that. Still waiting.
Yeah, that'd
dude.
be real funny.
Still waiting. But I thought, considering. We're that's basically what we're waiting for nowadays. You've just had the fantasy draft, and the big question that we had was, when are we getting the successor to the Switch? I thought, let's think of the Switch, and more importantly, let's think of something that runs like a Switch. Let's talk about the PS3. That's like the 3 degrees of separation for this. Switch successor, Switch, PS3, as it runs like ass as well. So we're gonna talk about the PS3 today. I lie, this was Hunter's idea. It's always Hunter's idea. You think I came up with an idea for this show? No. So we thought, it's a rare opportunity where it's just us two again. And Cal's never played the PS3, so we might as well touch on the PS3 because it's a console that me and you have ample experience with. So that's what we're going to do today. Yeah. We're going to talk about our favourite games. We have got 3x3s, but we're not doing it like a 3x3. We'll each tell you what our 9 picks are, and then we'll basically just do it. We're just playing a game of catch, dude. We'll throw it to one person, they'll talk about one game, throw it to the next. We'll just see how it goes. But yeah, if you're new here, this is the HGO podcast. We're here every Monday around 5 p.m. UK time, 12 p.m. Eastern on podcast services everywhere, and slightly later on youtube.com/games-only. Bit of housekeeping. Obviously, we are in January. The Fantasy Critic draft went up last week, so if you want to go and check that out, please do. It's always a fun one. How did you find the reactions? How are you feeling now, Hunter? It's been a week since we recorded that. How are you feeling after all of that went down? Are you feeling
still confident as ever?
Oh hell yeah! I don't know what I was thinking, but I rarely do. So we'll see how it goes. It's anyone's year. But yeah, so if you want to go check that out, you can obviously go and do that. The HGAs were 2 weeks ago, so if you want to go and check out what our favourite games from last year was, go and check that out as well. As we move into the new year, obviously January is pretty quiet. We're all expecting the Switch 2 reveal, but everything, there's, in terms of games, there's not really anything. So like I say, it's mainly little filler bits and pieces and whatsoever. We've got some PS Plus stuff coming up in the future. There's plenty of stuff to be looking forward to. So yeah, subscribe. Check, hit that follow button, do whatever, hit the like, do the thingy-majigger. I don't know what we're doing, but reviews will come eventually. Assassin's Creed will be out in a couple of weeks at this stage, so there's new stuff around the horizon. So yeah, look forward to it. Hunter, how are we doing this? Which way are we doing it? Usually we pull names out of the hat, but I feel like that's kind of redundant when there's just the two of us. Do you want to do you want to reveal your 9 first, or do you want me to reveal my 9 first?
I can go first.
Okay, cool. You do that. Do you want to give a countdown?
Yeah, sure. 3, 2, 1. I had to stop myself from clapping there.
Interesting. Right. So for those who are not video listeners, do you want to read them out for everybody?
All right. So my games that I've got on this here 3 by 3 are Metal Gear Solid 4, Devil May Cry 4, Dead Space, Lone Survivor, Dragon Age Origins, Puppeteer, God of War 3, Valkyria Chronicles, and Castle Crashers.
Hell yeah! I mean, that's a very you list. I'm not surprised by any of them really. So it'll be interesting to
Yeah,
talk to you about those. I guess I'll just do mine straight away as well, just so we can get that sorted, I guess. So again, and my 9 picks for this one is in 3, 2, 1, badoosh. So my 9 picks are, and I'm having to read this out like this: Batman: Arkham City, Mirror's Edge, Uncharted 2. I can't remember the subtitle. What is the subtitle? Among Thieves. That's what that one's called. Good
yeah.
start. 9 favorite games, by the way. Call of Duty Black Ops 1, Red Dead Redemption, Assassin's Creed 2, Sly Cooper Thieves in Time, Ratchet and Clank, A Crack in Time, and Thomas Was Alone. If you're wondering why I was kind of scrounging while Hunter was reading his out, I remembered that we haven't written timestamps or anything yet, so I'm like, we're doing a great job. Cal's not here and the ship just sinks, you know what I mean? Like, this is how well we do. Um,
uh,
so,
yeah.
Hunter, where do you want to start? In fact, while I fix all this timestamp shenanigans, I'll pick one of yours, right? So, I have not... Is there a theme? Is there a running theme? Is there anything to do with the squares, or did you just put them in any random order?
I just kind of put them as they came to me this time.
Cool, and let's just talk about, the classic Metal Gear Solid 4 for the PS3. Still trapped on the PS3 as of recording.
Still trapped
Uh,
on the PS3 as of now. Hopefully that gets remedied inside of the next year or two.
hell yeah. So tell
Yeah.
me all about Metal Gear Solid 4, the movie.
Oh yes, Metal Gear Solid 4, the movie. People love to talk about the cutscene length of this game, but I always thought that this was it's hilarious too because the actual like part where you're playing the game is probably the best it had felt at the time. As far as the controls and everything. So people always clowning on it for being a movie. It was very funny in that regard
Hmm.
because like it felt more natural to aim and such in that uh in 4 as opposed to 1 through 3. And it was this interesting dynamic where the first 2 chapters of the game really weren't even super stealthy. Like it was more like you were making your way through these combat zones that you weren't really uh you didn't really have any skin in the game. You could help these faction if you wanted to, but you didn't have to. So you just kind of had to make your way through these zones that people were just actively shooting each other in already.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, some of the boss fights are really cool in this one. Like one of the first bosses that you fight is basically this really cool game of hide and seek where um the boss is like octopus themed, so they do the whole like they blend into the background and are immune to like your thermal sensors and stuff if you try to look at them that way.
Hmm.
So it's just a matter of, you know, finding them inside of this relatively enclosed space. So if you don't find them quickly, they'll get you relatively fast as well. And then, as far as the story's wild and wacky, but if you're into the series up to that point, I feel like it's nothing that you won't.
You're already in. Yeah.
Yeah, you're already in. Like, is it silly that the game ends with an hour of cutscenes? Sure, but also it's the finale of the series, or better, or is up to the. I still feel like it's the spiritual finale anyway. I don't really care if there's more after it, but so I feel like it. I was always still into it, and most of the people I show the game to are still into it by then. Like, I don't think that I wasn't going, "Please stop," when they showed me more.
Mm. I think it's interesting because it's like Metal Gear 4 for me is obviously I haven't played any of them, but I watched my dad play a lot of Metal Gear growing up. And the two that I distinctly remember are Metal Gear Solid 1, obviously, but then also Metal Gear Solid 4, just because obviously when Metal Gear Solid 4 came out, I was old enough to also be playing games on the PS3 and stuff like that, and just remember looking at it and going, "Oh, I remember," like, because like Metal Gear 1 is my other comparison. I'm like, "Oh yeah, look at that cartoony looking game with the Psycho Mantis and stuff like that." And then every single bit of Metal Gear Solid 4 I saw was obviously like Middle Eastern grey, like kind of shooter. I was just like, oh, it's just like, it's like a third person shooter. So I really don't know anything about Metal Gear Solid 4 other than seeing some of the gameplay and just seeing some of the regular kind of mechanics of it. So I always think it's interesting because it's like, I genuinely know nothing about that game. And it's probably my least knowledgeable game in terms of Metal Gear. So it's like, I do want to play it eventually. I'm waiting for that port. I'm just waiting for it to come to
You and
modern
me
platforms.
both. Like when the collection came out in 2023, I showed the first three to some of my friends. And by the time this next one comes out, I'm gonna have to like make little recap videos of the first three games for them at this point.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
Silly, but yeah, I still think at a certain point in the past couple of years, it's been kind of cool to rag on MGS4 a little bit, I guess, because I guess the kind of anti-nostalgia crowd in a way. But I feel like the way that this game, first of all, it was doing it well before everyone else was nostalgia pandering,
Yeah.
and I feel like it still does it in a way that's true to what the rest of the series was doing.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Right. Right. Where are we going
All
next, Hunter?
right.
Where are we going next? Well, I quickly.
Um. We'll go to this one first, mostly because I'm curious. Arkham City,
Yes.
uh,
So,
instead of
like,
Asylum.
yeah, because I kind of went with a theme, really, where, so the middle line of my 3x3 was like the normie pick for me, where it was like those were the, like, Assassin's Creed 2, Red Dead Redemption, Black Ops 1. Very normie picks. The bottom
Yeah.
line were kind of games that I played like when I was, meant a lot to me more as like, someone who was, I don't know, I'm saying younger because this was like, Sly 4 was 2013, so it wasn't younger, but it almost spiritual PS2 successor games really, where I was like, that's the kind of stuff that I grew up playing, and that's the kind of stuff that I still enjoyed playing. And then the top row are
Yeah.
just games that I just really appreciated either at the time or still do to an extent. So Arkham Asylum is still, I probably think it is the best Arkham game out of all of them in retrospect. But I adored Arkham City when it came out, and I've replayed Arkham City the
Yeah.
most out of them. So I felt like it was a disservice to put Arkham Asylum on here, knowing that Arkham City, it's
Mhm.
like that'd be me trying to just try and wipe it under
Yeah,
the rug and go,
I see
yeah,
what you mean.
I don't like, yeah, Arkham Asylum's better. That's something that I have come to terms with in like the past 5 years, the past 6 years, not necessarily while I was on the PS3. When I was on the PS3, Arkham City was my jam because Arkham Asylum scared me because of Scarecrow, whereas Arkham
Mhm.
City didn't. That's the big thing because I was a coward. But yeah, I adore those two games. Regardless, I think they're excellent. I really do. I still think they hold up. I replayed both of them last year in 2024, and I thought they were both phenomenal. Still, I think they really do still hold up. Um, there's just so much to like about Arkham City. I think it's paced extremely well, which is like, Arkham Asylum is also paced extremely well, but, shifting to a more open world, but only having like 8 side quests, and they all kind of feel like
They all feel like a big deal rather than a throwaway thing.
yeah, exactly, I mean, do some of them get a bit goofy, like the Mad Hatter one is like, "Oh, Mr. Wayne, we found a cure." And, if you leave that to the post game, you're like, "Why would I need to bother?" Right? But
I
uh
remember I remember that being one I stumbled onto
mhm.
organically the first time I played the game, and like I didn't even remember who the Mad Hatter was. I know he had a couple of episodes on the animated series, but that had escaped my mind at that point in time. So I'm like, what's going on with you?
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But, like you still have those, almost more niche Batman villains. There's still plenty of those, with him and Zaz, I think, you kind of
Yeah.
fill in that void. But then you also have bigger hitters like Mr. Mr. Freeze has a side mission. Obviously, he's also in the main story, but then you have, Deadshot and all these other little things happening. And you're like, the Riddler's obviously back, um, and has apparently been a massive fan of Saw since the last time you've seen him, because every single person is in just like this torture room. And it's just like every single one of those side quests, I just kind of enjoy. Like whenever I replay Arkham City, I still do most of them. Like I don't do the Riddler trophies because I'm not like sadistic, but I really enjoy just going back and going, yeah, of course. Whenever Zaz phones up, I'll always answer the phone and track him down a little bit, or I'll always go and sort out the containers for Bane and see what happens. There's just a load of little things that just don't take too much time to go out of your way. Like I say, unless that's the Riddler trophies that take forever. And I think it all flows extremely well. There was some really awful practices like back in those eras, like online passes, and in this extent, for some reason they
Oh
put the
yeah.
Catwoman missions as an equivalent to a buy the game new thing, because they just took things that were obviously supposed to be in the main game and gated them behind a code that you had to enter if you bought the game brand new, which I hate and I think is stupid. But I really like Catwoman in that game. I think it's
Yeah.
there's a load of additions to the Rogues Gallery that weren't in Arkham Asylum that I think were really interesting and fun to explore in this universe, and they continue that with Night. I also think Night is fantastic, but I feel like City, they kind of just mastered what they were going for there. I think that it's not as tight knit at times as Arkham Asylum. I think Arkham Asylum is the more fun game to just replay, just because there are sections in Arkham City where I'm like, oh, I really don't like climbing the tower near the end to get to Hugo Strange. I think that's a really awful
Oh yeah.
section. I'm not a huge fan of the section where you have to get to Ra's al Ghul. I like the Ra's al
No.
Ghul stuff, but I
The
think the
fight
Wonder
is
City
good,
stuff
but
is
yeah,
bad.
getting there is not the
Yeah.
best. Yeah, I know what you mean.
But from a first time play, like, and that ending, not to spoil if you haven't played Arkham City, but as a first time blind playthrough of the game and going through it and going, oh, they've gone there. Like, it was such it's such a bold step, and it's just such an interesting way of going about things, where it's like they took some risks with Arkham City, and I think it paid off. And I think that,
Yeah.
Rocksteady, it's a shame Suicide Squad was
I
so
think in
ass,
some
because they're really good at what they do, and it's just like, my God, I
I
miss
think
it. I do miss it.
I think in some ways it did lead to certain characters that they gave a bit of shine to, getting a bit more shine elsewhere too later on down the line.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. I also think that the Arkham verse did like so many good things for characters. Like, I look at stuff like the recent Batman films and stuff like that, and I'm like, oh, just the regular, it's like Harley Quinn Harley Quinn was pretty popular in the animated series when she came from, and she was in the comics still a little bit after that. But I feel like Arkham City really did kind of inject Harley Quinn into them, especially Arkham City, which just kind of went, because Arkham City Harley Quinn is essentially what Harley Quinn became in the future films and all of that jazz. That just kind of became Harley Quinn. I'm like, that's kind of crazy that a lot of that is down to a video game of all things. And this is before video games were seen as instrumental in that way. Nowadays you're like, yeah, whatever, The Last of Us turned into a HBO show, whatever. Like, that happens. But just to go, oh yeah, these video games are doing such a good job, we can inject some of that into just the regular Batman ethos. I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's a shame the Arkham Knight wasn't an original character and they didn't let them inject that properly. But other than
Yeah,
that,
yeah, I know.
I really
uh,
like Arkham City. I think it has some really fun moments. I think the villains are particularly strong. I think Mark Hamill has an incredible performance. It might be Mark Hamill's best performance as the Joker, to be honest, in my opinion, anyway. I really like Ra's al Ghul, Hugo Strange. They're all really interesting. Like, again, I wouldn't necessarily, if you were going, who's going to be a lead antagonist in a Batman game, I don't think you would necessarily automatically go to Hugo Strange, but they do, and it works really well. So I think it's fantastic. I really like it. I like the Arkham trilogy a lot. I like Arkham Origins, but
yeah, Arkham Origins is good, and I don't think people give that one enough credit most of the time. But
100% they
hey,
don't give it enough credit. But Arkham City. I think there's a reason why Arkham City kind of became the almost formula for superhero video games going forward. I think it's why, there's a reason why
Yeah,
it's
it's
so loved.
basically still been untouched for the past
The
10 plus
Insomniac
years,
Spider-Man
where it's
games are
been like,
Jason. Yeah, they're just
take it and make it bigger,
yeah.
is
That's what
essentially
Insomniac
the,
Spider-Man games are just
yeah,
going. Wow, that was a great game. Let's borrow the infrastructure of that and expand it.
yeah.
It's fantastic, and I hope Rocksteady goes back to making single player games that are like that again. I really hope that they get to work on something that isn't a games as a service, because when they do make single player video games, they're damn
They're good
good.
at it.
Yeah. Right. I am going to pick another one of yours, and then I think I left my drink in the other room after spending time to go, so I might just go and quickly run while you start explaining it. So I'm going to pick one that I obviously already know quite a bit about. So I'm going to go with Dead Space, because we've talked about that game before. So tell us about Dead Space,
We
Hunter.
sure have. Oh, Dead Space, the original version especially, was a cool shot in the arm. It became basically the last big AAA horror game to like do its thing before Amnesia came around and shifted the paradigm of how people chose to make horror for a while. And I think they did a really good job at it as far as that's concerned. Like, it was obviously inspired by Resident Evil 4 in a bunch of respects, with the camera perspective and everything. Basically, I believe the idea was put that in space and then also let you walk while you aim. And I think they did a good job at balancing that with making the monsters you were fighting still pretty intimidating. Like, the necromorphs, amongst most horror game monsters, would be the things I would want to fight perhaps the least
Yeah, they're
compared
pretty
to
creepy.
Resident Evil's. Yeah, the Resident Evil zombies, I feel like I could take most of the normal ones of those. I could not handle a regular necromorph. I would stand zero chance.
You could try, but
But
good luck with that.
yeah, but yeah, and I think they did a good job at still balancing the, some psychological elements, and it was more action oriented than a lot of horror games at the time, but it still managed to, or yeah, at the time, the direction that the genre went in after that was where it started tipping into the not very scary at all kind of um direction. But
Hmm.
I think Dead Space still did a good job at balancing that, introducing the psychological elements. I remember it doesn't overstay its welcome, and the only dip in quality really is the one mission or the one chapter where they have you shoot the ship's lasers to fight off the asteroids, which, they remedied that in the remake, so play the newer version. It's not even a big deal. But
Hmm.
overall, still a really great game. I still think it holds up. I played the original version still just a couple years ago, even, and I
Yeah.
think it was really good.
I mean, it is a classic. Like, that's the thing, is it's like it's very much of this generation. I think it's the one of, if
Yeah,
not the
of
iconic horror game from this
Yeah,
generation.
I would say that of the PS3 generation, it is the iconic, at least AAA horror game.
100%.
Yeah,
It's
and like it was like the last AAA horror classic, I would say, even still, like the last one that I think got a really big audience before they had to fall back on remakes and just sequels, you know?
yeah,
Because like I'd hardly say that the Callisto Protocols is gonna be going down in history as a classic horror game in the next couple of years, or even as much as I like The Evil Within, that's not really something that's on the tip of the tongue of the regular person.
yeah. It's weird how influential Dead Space kind of was. Even not even just from like a horror, and like, because obviously a lot of modern horror games definitely took a lot of inspiration from the original Dead Space. But
Yeah,
not just that, but it's like it's weird how many paths cross with Dead Space, because obviously you had the I can't remember that it's Michael Condrey and what's his name, the other guy, what's his name,
Glenn
Glenn Schofield,
Schofield.
yeah,
Yeah,
who obviously at Visceral. Visceral obviously, unfortunately, met a sad demise, but then they moved over. Then they made Sledgehammer Games, and that's like, the big third developer for Call of Duty. They worked on Call of Duty for ages. Then they just like, it's weird how everything like just kind of stacked up, where it was like,
it is this weird spider web effect, like that stems from this game, huh?
yeah, because it's like it went from there, it went to Call of Duty. Call of Duty World War II had like a horror zombies mode that very much took inspiration from Dead Space in its creepy designs and body horror and all that jazz. And then obviously Glenn Schofield went over to do Callisto Protocol and stuff like that, and now he's moving on to something else again. It's just like, it's very weird
Oh,
how,
that works out better for him.
yeah, hopefully. But
Yeah.
it's very weird to me how it was like, it's just like how things lead into each other, where it's like, if it wasn't for Dead Space, then there probably wouldn't have been a third Call of Duty team, which led to that weird thing. It's like,
Yeah.
and it's like, to be fair, I also think it's a shame, because like, if they didn't jump ship to Call of Duty, then Visceral might even still be around. If they didn't hop off of Call of Duty, maybe they like Sledgehammer Games also maybe would have been in a better shape than it has been. It's like, it's weird, right? It's
Yeah.
like, it's
Yeah.
very weird. But
Or even when it comes down, I still think Dead Space probably has the best HUD in a the best HUD that there's been since Dead Space, at least, and probably will ever be, because HUDs in games just get worse these days.
they do. They're fucking horrendous.
With the
They're horrendous.
everything that you need to know is in the world diegetically and not like obtrusive in any way.
What do you mean? I
And
love HUDs.
no one seems to know how to do that anymore.
They don't. And it's great. I love it. It's so good. But, Dead Space is a classic.
And with good reason. All right. I guess for you, let's have a chat about. I don't feel like I hear you talk that much about specifically a crack in time with
Oh,
Ratchet.
sure. Ratchet and Clank Crack in Time is the best Ratchet and Clank game, and it's not even close.
Uh,
I adore this video game. Oof. I'd say when leaving the PS3 generation, 2013, how old have I been? 15? Is that right?
approximately, yeah.
Leaving the generation, like if we were, going to PS4, if you were to ask me what's my favorite PS3 video game of all time, then Ratchet and Clank: A Crack in Time would definitely be in the top 3. It would be like that Assassin's Creed 2 and Red Dead Redemption would probably be my top 3. There was something about Ratchet and Clank: A Crack in Time, and they advertised Crack in Time as as the final Ratchet and Clank game. As
Oh,
originally
yeah.
they were like, this is it, the end of the future trilogy. Maybe this is it. Maybe we don't come back to Ratchet and Clank ever again. Maybe this is it. We're wrapping things up.
If they were any of PlayStation's other studios, they probably wouldn't have.
Yeah. And to be honest, I think if they had had a massive, huge hit that wasn't Ratchet and Clank, I think they also probably would have. I think Insomniac was always in this weird state of, making great games, but they were constantly in flux, where it was like, Resistance didn't do as well as people think it did. So they were still making stuff like Ratchet and Clank and keeping by and, keeping on. And then they moved over to Sunset Overdrive, and Sunset Overdrive didn't do all that well. It wasn't until Spider-Man fucking did stupid numbers and Ratchet and Clank 2016.
That's the funny thing too, is like before Spider-Man got announced, I remember people were thinking it was going to be Sucker Punch that was going to be doing Spider-Man
Yeah. Which made
because of
sense.
the infamous
Yeah.
thing, So the Insomniac doing it was one of those things where people were like, "Oh, how about that?"
Yeah, it was weird. But yeah. So A Crack in Time is just, it came out at the right time. And it's just a damn good video game. It just really is. I think it is. It still is the best Ratchet and Clank game. I still don't think they've hit that high. I like Rift Apart. I like Rift Apart quite a bit. Out of the original trilogy, I think Ratchet and Clank 2 is the best. I can't remember what the funny is it Pure Arsenal?
I
Is that
never
2?
know what the order of them is. I just kind of hear them tossed out
I think it's
in
because it was just called Ratchet and
conversation.
Clank 2 here, or Locked and Loaded. So it's like it wasn't, it didn't have the funny pun name here. But Ratchet and Clank 2, I think, is phenomenal. I think it's the best one. Ratchet and Clank 3 is also pretty good. No, 3 is up your arsenal. What's 2? Full Frontal Assault, is that 2? Whatever. I don't care. These are all
Which
silly
one's
names.
Going Commando?
That's 2. Going Commando's 2.
Okay.
Thank you. Gosh. Try and figuring out which of the stupid puns are which.
Yeah.
But yeah, so A Crack in Time, it's like, I like Tools of Destruction. Quest for Booty is pretty, fun, but it's like 2 hours long. We're going into A Crack in Time, and it's just, it has this story. So obviously, Ratchet and Clank are separated for the entire video. Clank is over in this hall of a hub area called the Great Clock, doing loads of puzzle solving sections, which I really like. And then Ratchet's kind of going on this own quest to try and find Clank and find the Lombaxes, where he finds
Oh,
his
I feel like
father's.
I've played this one before.
Yeah, and he plays. And he eventually finds another Lombax who was his father's best friend, who actually turned out that he was kind of pushed away from the rest of the Lombaxes, and you don't know why. And it's like him and you and him are kind of teaming up to try and find Clank and find the Great Clock. And there's a load of stuff that no Ratchet and Clank game has done since. For example, you fly in your ship between planets. The galaxy, each galaxy is a hub world, and on it there are little planets that you can land on with zonies to catch and little different puzzle areas. There's radio stations where there's like pirate radio and stuff like that, and you've got like there's a load of fun, quirky stuff. Each level has a really interesting mechanic that I kind of vibe with. The big level that I always think about is there's a level where you're working with the zonie, and you're basically you're on a desolate planet, and it's similar to a Rift Apart. You kind of you hop between a past version and a future version of the world, and the way that you impact the past version changes the future, and vice versa. And there's some cool stuff.
Yeah.
And this is on the PS3, so there's no like you're riding through portals and going between them without a load screen. So whenever they're like, "Look, you're doing this without crossing a load screen," like you've done that before on Crack in Time and PS3, but there's just so many good gameplay moments, and the story's really solid, and it is by far the best Ratchet and Clank story. It is by far the best story that they've done. The dynamics between Ratchet and Clank, the whole idea of, are they better off alone? Have they found their own paths now? Does Ratchet, is Ratchet set on finding the rest of his species? Is Clank, Clank finds out that he was basically built to basically take over this great clock which controls time itself, and it's like, have they found their own paths? Do they need each other anymore? Is it like, what is the actual goal here? And Dr. Nefarious is just prattling about in the middle of it. It's a really fun game, and I do think it's the best Ratchet and Clank game, and I still do, and I don't understand why they've never ported the future trilogy. I never understood why they haven't done it, because again, it's fantastic. And I think Crack in Time is just brilliant. It's a game that I wish was on a different console because it's brilliant. I genuinely think it's the best Ratchet and Clank game, and it's not even close.
Yeah,
it's brilliant. It genuinely is brilliant. And I felt like it was a great ending point. So I would like, as a kid, even as a kid when it came out in 2009, I was like, as a 12-year-old, I'm like, if that is the last Ratchet and Clank, what a place to end it. I'm happy with it ending. I didn't play any of the future spin-offs that they did on PS3, like all the other ones, that they did, that Into the Nexus and All for One and Full Frontal Assault. That's what that one is. That's a PS3 spin-off. I didn't play any of those until like the past couple of years, because in my mind I was like, oh, they're just spin-offs, and Ratchet's kind of done. Like, it's kind of over. Like they finished it. They wrapped the story up. It's really great. It's still one of Insomniac's best games, I think, personally. Like, I really do like it. I think it's brilliant. And I don't know. Like, I love I love Rift Apart. I really, really like Rift Apart. But I think that it's like some of the magic of Ratchet has gone. And I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's a new dev team or whatever, but it's like, it almost feels as if it's like some of its personality has kind of left the room, and like, I don't know if Insomniac sees it as, it's like, this needs to be a people pleaser game. So there's no funny jokes anymore. There's no quips. There's no kind of characters that are just
I guess I
arseholes.
can
Everyone's just
get
kind
what
of like.
I think I can see what you mean, because like when Rift Apart come out 2021, you know, I played it and liked it when it came out. I think it's a very well-made game. Nothing about it really sticks with me that much, though.
No,
It's
I
just I
like
played
with
it,
it.
thought it was cool. I
Yeah,
remember things that happen in it if I think about it, but it's one of those like well-made games that I don't feel very passionately about. I'd play another one if they made it because it was good, but
100%. Yeah,
you know,
I think there's part of Ratchet that I think I think there was a difference between the PS2 Ratchets and the PS3 Ratchets as well. I think the PS3 Ratchets leaned into this a bit more, where they were like, let's take the tongue-in-cheek humor and all of the pop culture references and all that jazz and kind of throw them out a little bit, but let's replace it with a really good story and a really fun narrative that felt like it meant something. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I miss the stupid references to naughties, like things that are happening, like Courtney Gears and goofy shit like that is really funny. There's some real Skidmit Marks. There's like some really funny things in the original trilogy that are kind of gone in the future, but they replace it with a great story. And Rift Apart isn't a bad story. It is just very generic, and the writing is very generically done. Where I'm like, it's all fine, but I'm not sitting there laughing. Like, there's no point where I'm like, there's no stupid boss fight where I'm going against like a 2000s pop star robot. Like there's
like
nothing there that I kind of
like
miss
I
it.
remember one of the funniest things about that one was right at the beginning when Nefarious was complaining about giving his one minion paternity leave.
Yeah, that is yeah. There are a couple of good
And I
jokes, and
can't remember anything else
Nefarious does
off
have
the
some
top of my
really
head.
funny moments, but you know, it does feel like I don't know. It feels like, and we have these we've had these conversations before, even with like Spider-Man 2, where everybody seems to be just a bit too formal with each other. Like it just has that kind of inoffensive quirk to it, which is just modern Insomniac games. It seems now, where it's like everybody has to get along and everyone has to be good, and it's like when Peter goes all Venom on us, he doesn't actually like. I'm like, he's not an asshole. He is just like he's like, ooh, fuck off.
He's
He's
just
not like
kind
this.
of
Yeah,
grumpy.
he's just
Yeah.
grumpy. Like there's no
That's kind of
snark. There's no
I'd
bite.
wager that with the exception of like Naughty Dog's games, which are the complete opposite direction, that's kind of
Hmm.
a thing that PlayStation deals with in general, where a lot of those stories feel right focus tested
Yeah,
in a lot of ways. Like the Horizon has the same issue.
and I think A Crack in Time balances the kind of the. I think it balances both camps perfectly. I think it's got some really funny moments in it. I think it's got a really great story. And I think, yeah, I think it is the best Ratchet and Clank game. I just, like I say, I just kind of miss the humor. I can't wait for them to bring over Ratchet 1, 2, and 3 to PlayStation 4 and 5 eventually, because you've got to assume that they're going to do that after they finish with Jack, now that Sly's on there too.
Yeah,
Because
yeah, I have to imagine that they're gonna do all. I can't wait to do.
I don't think people realize how different Ratchet was. And I'm not talking from a gameplay point of view, I'm talking from a cutscene point of view and from just a narrative point of view of how tongue in cheek and how stupid it was and how not like how very much it was so like anti-capitalist and so kind of, up it like, kind of like making an enemy out of everybody. And it's just like that kind of is just gone now. It's like Quark was an asshole, like a real like he was
Yeah,
a
yeah,
really
I know what you
nasty,
mean.
like he was a real you loved to hate him and he was goofy and stupid, but you were sitting there going, oh my god, he's such a prat. And it's like now in like look at Rift Apart and you're like, yeah, Quark's just Quark. He's just a funny guy. Look at him. He's a
He's just
goofy
Quarkin.
dumbass. He's
Yeah.
stupid. And I like Quark, but I miss it. But yeah, Ratchet and Clank Crack Time. Fantastic. Okay, over to you. I promise I won't make all of mine twice the length of yours. I promise. Uh, let us talk about Lone Survivor, because I don't remember Lone Survivor being a PS3 game.
That's how I first played it,
Oh,
actually. It was,
interesting.
the same month I got Puppeteer on the PS Plus was the month that they gave us Lone Survivor, and because I was in high school and not affording my own games,
Mm-hmm.
I was all about this.
The classic, right? Yeah.
All about it in the hour-long install times for these very small games.
Dude, remind me of install times. I've got a great one for Assassin's Creed 2 when we get to it. Hell yeah.
Oh my god, I missed the chance. Metal Gear Solid 4 had to take breaks in between the chapters to install the pieces of
Oh,
the game.
Gosh,
I think once you played it the first time, it didn't matter anymore because it was all there, but you had to do it. It had to be done the first time for some reason. That way, it was silly.
busting.
But yeah, Lone Survivor on the PlayStation 3 was how I first played it. And I really, yeah, for a long time, this was like the indie horror game that I really hitched my wagon to. As far as like, it was my favorite thing that wasn't wasn't Silent Hill or Resident Evil in the horror space.
Was it one of your? Because we'll get to that when I eventually get to Thomas Was Alone. Was it one of the first indie games you ever played? Because this is like PS3 is the
I
first
would
generation of
wager
actual indie
so,
games.
yeah. One of them, yeah, well, yeah, like Lone Survivor, Castle Crashers on here, I
Hmm.
guess, would be another one that's it was one of the first handfuls of
Yeah, it was
indie
like
games, at
like the
least.
Xbox Live Arcade era,
Yeah, yeah,
basically. Yeah, yeah.
that I had gotten to, and I thought it was real good. You could tell the Silent Hill influence there while it was still doing its own thing in a really cool way. Like, I think at that point I'd never really seen a horror game done in like a 2D space like this
Mm.
in that way. I think that also it what was it? I think I played this in 2014 in the summertime, so it was before The Evil Within had come out. And at that point it had been, several years since Dead Space. Um so like Resident Evil 5 didn't do anything for me. I'd kind of and Amnesia was okay, but like I didn't care about it that much.
Mhm.
I'd kind of been like, these horror games aren't doing much for me these days. And then this game came along, and I'm like, "Oh, I do like these, don't I?"
Yeah.
And it was like one of those things where I played it the first time, I was like, thought it was good. It compelled me enough to play it again relatively soon after that. I'm like, I didn't get the ending that felt satisfying, and I know that they're all horror games are always weird about that, so I'm gonna try and play it better this time. And lo and behold, I got that, and yeah, it's still been one of these ones that when people want recommendations for horror games that they probably haven't played yet, I'd bust this one out because even now people are less likely to have played this than like Pro Country or Signalis probably
Mhm.
soon because those popped off a little quicker in their lifespans. But yeah, I think it's real good. I don't the developer, he still makes games. I don't think he's actually put out a new game since he's put out a new version
Mhm.
of Lone Survivor since then. I think he's working on something else, and I'll be there when it's done for sure because I really like this game.
Oh, yeah. I've heard you talk about it a lot over the years. I'm like, yeah, yeah. That's like in my head. That's just like compart. Can I even fuck? Do I dare say that word? Fucking, I'm not gonna.
Compartmentalized,
Yeah,
right?
compartmentalize. Thank you. Goodness gracious, that's like the one word that is like just a tongue twister in of itself. You know what I mean? Like, it's like
Yeah,
compartmentalized. Um, in my head as just a hunter game. Like
yeah,
it's just filed away under hunter games in my head of like Lone Survivor.
yeah.
There it is, right there. But
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't realize it was a
Mhm.
PS3 game originally. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Actually, before we move on,
Yeah,
dude,
yeah.
like straight up, like a year after I had played it, um, I had got, I had gotten my PS4, but still no money, and it didn't have the thing where it didn't cross buy that way.
Hmm.
I think it cross buyed with Vita, but I would have to have
Yeah, that's how
purchased
it
it
was. Yeah, it
again
was
on
PS3
the
to Vita. Yeah.
PS4, and I was still, in school and had no money. So I was like, man, I really want to play this again, but the PS3 pretty much terminated. At least the one
Yeah,
that was because it wasn't on my account that I had cashed it in on originally. I was playing on like my brother's or something.
the
So
classic back
that
in the day.
that
I
P-
used to
that
love doing
PS3
that. Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
work anymore. So I was sitting there like, I really want to play this game again, but I don't have the resources to. So like born from that during my creative writing class that I was taking at the time just to fill my desire for it. I basically wrote like d- d- essentially like a not an adaptation quite, but it was a horror story, basically very heavily inspired by my desire to play it again.
Nice. Yeah,
It's
that
always
brings
a
it
fun
just it
thing to
does bring
shout
back
out about
memories of
this
the
game.
yeah, it brings back memories of the PS3. Because yeah, it was at the age where it's like I didn't have PS Plus until it was a requirement on PS4. I didn't have PS Plus.
Yeah.
And when it did become a requirement, it was on my, my parents bought it for me as a Christmas present or whatever, and it'd be activated on my PS4. But before then, on PS3, obviously, we were young enough where it was like everything that was bought, like if it was DLC or anything like that, that was on my dad's account and I was piggybacking off of it. So it was like I never had the experience of like having to buy something off the PS store,
Yeah, yeah.
rarely. I'd just be like, I need like, just be begging my dad,
Yeah,
buy this, buy me this
yeah.
DLC, please. I need it. Anyway, where are we going next?
Alright, on to you. Um, let's go with, Mirror's Edge.
Dude, I love Mirror's Edge.
Yeah, yeah.
I every time I go back and replay Mirror's Edge, which I've replayed Mirror's Edge like a lot over the years. I originally played it on PS3, um, because it was like super. It was super cheap. Like this game obviously didn't do too hot, and it was always like super cheap. So I was just like, oh yeah, just let me just try out Mirror's Edge, and I loved it because I was a big fan of like watching YouTube Let's Plays at this point in time. This was like 2011, 2012.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, it's like one of those things where I don't do that anymore very
yeah,
much since I can just buy whatever I want, but a lot of times back in the day, I was watching stuff that I was
no,
interested
a
in
hundred
just to
percent. My
experience it vicariously.
my childhood was absolutely filled to the brim with a load of content creators like just to name a few, like Nerd Cubed and Total Biscuit, who rest in peace was like
Mhm.
one of my favorite people on the planet, dude. Because they would do like these one-off episodes of like, what the hell is this, or what is this, and when you are a kid who's like 13 years old or whatever, and you have no money to actually be buying these games, you just be asking for stuff for birthdays and Christmas, and maybe you'd have like some money to go and buy a pre-owned game every now and again, right? It was like
Yeah.
that's how I vicariously learned about a load of games, was from people like Nerdcube, like Total Biscuit, who were just playing games constantly and going, "Oh yeah, so this is Mirror's Edge." And I think I must have been Nerdcube, I think, who did like a playthrough of Mirror's Edge. And I just remember watching him play Mirror's Edge and go, "This game looks so cool, like first person parkour with like stuff like that." I'm like, so when I eventually got the opportunity to finally play it, I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna play it." And I really struggled with it because it's a really hard video game to kind of get. It's training wheels are off. It's really hard to actually build up a muscle memory for it. Once you actually know how to play Mirror's Edge, it's really intuitive and it's really fun. But it's really hard to get to grips with that game, especially because it's really hard. Especially if you don't want to use the guns, because the guns are terrible. So if you want to ignore the guns, the game is really difficult. So it's like,
Yeah, and it's like on paper, if it's not something you've done before, running around doing doing parkour stuff in first person, I'm still not very good at it when first
yeah,
person games ask me to like uh, move with some kind of precision on the worry about where you're landing kind of deal. Like I was not super
100%.
great at Ghost Runner.
100%. Yeah, I was sick at Ghost Runner. I loved it. Fantastic game. Um,
Yeah.
I still haven't played Ghost Runner 2. I want to get to it, but one day I'll get to it. But yeah, it's just like there's something about Mirror's Edge that I just absolutely adore. It is like an arcade platforming game that just is a joy to play when you know how to play it. Once you know how to play it well, it's just I went back and I platinumed it on PS3 a year and a half ago. And it's like the PS3 version is the worst way to play a Mirror's Edge. It is by far the worst port because it does not run well. It is a port of a PC game. I think it was.
Oh, I've got one of those on here too.
It's like it's a game that is made for PC. If you're gonna play Mirror's Edge, play it on PC or Xbox, because on Xbox they did backwards compat and it's 4K
Oh,
60. So PS3 is the last place you should be playing Mirror's Edge. But I still went back and played it on PS3 and platinumed it, and I adore it. I genuinely do love it, and it's one of the first. The PS3 is it was the first era of video games where I could start to acknowledge and appreciate them for like actual artistic reasons and not just I had fun with that game. It was good. Like it was like the soundtrack to Mirror's Edge still sticks and resonates with me, and it's something that I pinpoint to being like, wow, does the soundtrack lift this kind of video game into like its own emotional weight. The story is not very good, but the soundtrack carries it in terms of weight. And I just like it was the first kind of time where stuff like that clicked. There's plenty of games in this generation that did that, but you know, when I was a kid playing on the PS2, I was just like, I like Sly Cooper. It's pretty fucking cool. I didn't ever go, oh, the soundtrack to Sly Cooper is really interesting. Like I never did that. I'm just a dumb kid, right? You don't
Yeah,
think of games like that.
yeah.
Um, but the Mirror's Edge theme is just something else where I'm like, I love the soundtrack to Mirror's Edge. I love the way Mirror's Edge looks. It still looks better on a PS3 than 90% of games do on a PS5, just because of it committing to its art style and doing so excellently. Um, I think it's a fantastic video game. Is the story dog shit? Yes. But it doesn't need to be because that's not what it's there
Sometimes
for.
that doesn't matter. The
Doesn't really
story of
doesn't matter.
Mario is never good either.
No. I love Mirror's Edge. I think everybody should, at least at some point in their life, give it a go. I think it's brilliant. And, you know, it's very easily accessible, unless you're on PlayStation, because they never ported it to PS4 or 5 or whatever. But if you're on Xbox, you can play it via backwards compatibility and it's 4K 60. And if you have a PC, you probably already own it from a Humble Bundle at some point. But if you don't, it probably goes on sale for what, like pennies at this point? Like, genuinely? Like,
Yeah.
you should play it. You should do yourself a favor and play Mirror's Edge because it's fantastic. As of recording, it's the winter sale. It won't be as you're coming, but it's currently $1.99 on
Oh
on a
man.
sale. So literally, you can pick this up for less than a cup of coffee, and if you haven't, then I'd highly recommend it. So as I was saying before, Hunter lost connection yet again. Talk to us about Dragon Age Origins, because obviously you're a big Dragon
Ah,
Age head.
yes, and it's all because of this game. This was 100% a game that was long, had a lot to discover through repeated playthroughs, and we only had a handful of games, so I had all the time in the world to do it. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's just Dragon Age did a really good job. I think Origins it does the best at introducing you to the world in a way that's palatable. Like I guess maybe 2 might have been it. 2 is really small scale, I guess, is why that would be less of a case. And then 3, or Inquisition rather, and Veilguard as well. But
Mhm.
everything's just like DEFCON 5 already, and
Yeah.
you don't really you don't really get to take it in at your own pace. Whereas I think Origins does a better job at doing that. I think that you know, as far as they do a good job at giving you a kind of broad stroke goal where, you know, the catastrophe that's happening, the blight as it's called in the game, is you got to eliminate that. And they do a good job at like breaking up the smaller kind of arcs that you're going through into all being in service of that, while giving each area its own interesting thing to do as well. Like when you go to get help from the dwarves, it's like, oh, they're having a crisis of succession with the king died, so you have to essentially, because the two candidates are deadlocked, you have to go and do something for them to break the tie,
Yeah.
essentially. Or when you're getting help from the elves, they're being hassled by werewolves, and they can't help you until you solve that problem.
Mhm.
And it comes down to even like even like the side quests aren't anything like I don't think you'd be missing a whole lot if you skipped over them, but I think that they're intriguing enough to motivate, or at least for me, they're intriguing enough to motivate me to do them, even though that I'm not really missing anything,
Yeah.
you know, loot wise. And it's not even like anything crazy most of the time. Like some of them's just you're talking to this barkeep who's got shady connections, and if you read the descriptions, as it turns out, these shady connections are basically two rival like criminals that you're eventually you have to like pick one or the other. And I think the first time I got to the end of that little chain of events, I didn't even realize what was going on. I locked myself out of one, but
Mhm.
it's just little details like that, or like the origins that you can pick at the beginning of the game. Sometimes, it's that's part of how it's good at introducing you to the world and everything. But if you like, say, if you pick an elf or something, people will respond to you differently than if you're the human noble or whatever kind of deal.
Hmm.
It's just all down to details and things that most people wouldn't think to like questions that only one person will ask out of like every 500 people that play the game,
Yeah.
and they'll have an answer for it, and it's really commendable that way, almost to the point where it's like, this albatross around the neck of the series going forward, because they're like, we can't just address all of these details all of the time anymore.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, where like with the world states and stuff, so they had to they've constantly been shuffling around the how do we bring as much of this forward as we can without,
Hmm.
dumping all of it. And eventually, that hit its breaking point with Veilguard's tortured development.
Yeah. That's fair. Yeah. But it's a classic. I think Bioware had a fucking field day that generation. Like genuinely, it's that this was their generation with Origins, the Mass Effect fucking trilogy. Like like
Yeah,
they just had like an absolute field day with this generation. Um,
they even still really well. I guess the only arguable miss at the time would have been Dragon Age 2, which wasn't like a bad game. It just people didn't like it as much as the rest of them at the time. And they didn't even really miss until after Inquisition
yeah,
with Andromeda. But,
an Anthem. That was the back to back kind of like,
it was
oh hello.
that was the double whammy, and then it took you know a very long time for Veilguard to come out after that.
Yeah, yeah, cool. Right, where are we going next?
Right. Um. Hmm. Let's oh, let's go with Black Ops.
Oh hell yeah, I love me some slop, dude. Gobble gobble. Um, Black Ops was my first Call of Duty. I
Really?
watched my dad play World at War, and when my mum wasn't looking, he maybe let me play a game or two of it. But my dad has always been my dad's a history buff. He really likes history um stuff, whether it's
Mhm.
the Vikings, like everything, the Romans, all that stuff, World War One, World War Two. He's just like he loves history. Like History Channel
Yeah.
used to be a thing that was constantly on, documentaries, Discovery, all of that jazz was always constantly a thing that was always happening in my house. And he really liked originally the Call of Duty's on the PS2 and going into the PS3 because of like their historical stuff. Just because he's like, I like, he likes his World War Two. He likes stuff like that. Um, and so I didn't really see my dad play much of Modern Warfare. My uncle was really into Modern Warfare to the point where it was the COD 4 was the only Call of Duty he ever played, and he was still playing it as of like 2018. Back when there was a remaster, he was still playing the PS3 version.
Oh
Um,
my god.
he was really into
Imagine that
COD
bump
4.
like a year back when they turned on like the backward. I forget what Xbox did, but everyone started playing the
Yeah,
old
the backwards
Call of
compat for all
Duties.
the old
Yeah.
CODs. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But so, but my dad had World at War, and I just remember, watching my dad play World at War all the time. Um, And World at War came out. I was 10 years old or whatever, so I was like, I definitely should not be playing this because there's blood and gore everywhere. I don't know if you've seen World at War. It's probably one of the most gruesome Call of Duties that they ever did, just from a point of view of World War Two, um, and not this World War Two that is like current Call of Duty when it goes back there, which is all like kind of, hey ho, here we go. Let's like
Hey ho, we're the Allied powers.
Yeah, and don't get me
Come to
wrong,
free the
Call of
world.
Duty Call of Duty is always propaganda and always will be
Yes.
propaganda, but there was
Yeah.
more actual horror and people's kneecaps being shot in and all that like actual like kind of gruesome stuff, whereas it's very sterile now in comparison. But so I watched my dad play Call of Duty quite a bit. My cousin in Wales was always a huge like fan of zombies, and they used to play zombies when I'd go and visit family. And I'd be too scared, so I'd leave because I didn't really want to deal with it because I was too scared because I was 10. So fast forward to Black Ops 1, and Black Ops 1 was the first Call of Duty game where my dad was basically like, yeah, if you want to play Call of Duty, you can play it. Like, you can play it. You know, you're 12 years old or whatever. Go ahead, knock yourself out. What's the worst that could happen? Because I had friends that were playing it at school.
Yeah.
And, you know, this was 2010? I was like 12. I think that's right. Was it 2010? Was Black Ops 2010 or was it 09?
Was it? I think '09 was Modern Warfare 2,
Yeah, so
wasn't
yeah,
it?
it was 2010, right? So it was 2010,
Yeah.
2011. I would have been, yeah, like 12.
12 to
Yeah,
13 ish.
12-ish.
Yeah.
And, you know, I really liked it. I really loved the multiplayer. I still, to this day, Black Ops 1 multiplayer is still my favorite Call of Duty multiplayer of all time. I adore it. Um, It's so arcadey, it's unreal. It has stupid like money that you earn after every match that you can spend on camos and stuff like that. You could go into wager matches and wager your fake money and win more bags.
Yeah.
Playing stupid party games, so much fun. DLCs were so much fun. The campaign I really love. I still do love the Black Ops, the original Black Ops 1 and Black Ops 2. To be fair, fuck it, I'll say it. All of the Black Ops campaigns, bar Black Ops 3, are still kind of all sick. Even the new ones are pretty damn good. They're not as good as the original Black Ops 1 and 2, but they're still pretty damn solid. Um, so I really liked the campaign, really liked the multiplayer, and then zombies. This was the first time I actually played zombies, and I played zombies with friends, and this is what kicked off my love of the Black Ops Zombies kind of mode through. Like, it's still there. It's not as strong as it once was, but like, man, I love the original Black Ops 1 um, zombies mode, and I have so many, you know, memories of playing it with friends in primary school, and then, you know, my dad was buying map packs at this point, and I was like, oh, sick, because that means I get the new zombies maps and stuff, and just playing like Ascension or Call of the Dead, which is still my one of, if not my favorite zombies map ever. Moon, Shangri, just all this stuff is just like so much nostalgia, and it's like it's the reason that I like Call of Duty Zombies is because of Black Ops 1. And it's like it's weird because it's one of those games where I played so much of it. And you know, Black Ops 2, I was more moved over to the Xbox 360 at that point. So this was like the PS3 COD game that I really did play and played a lot of. But it's weird because it's like in retrospect, I look back and I'm like, I spent so much time playing this game, absolutely loads of it, and I love it to death. But there's no like, I don't have like really specific memories. It's just being in a time with it, you know. I'm not sitting there going, I remember when this
Yeah.
happened or that happened. It's
I know
like
what you mean.
when I think about it, I'm like, in my head, I'm like, yeah, it definitely came out in 2010. I was definitely X years old, but in my head, I'm like, I even feel like I was younger, you know. Like it's one of those ones where it's like in my head, I'm like, I don't really think of it as like, oh yeah, 2010, what, Iron Man 2? Like, yeah, that was the same period of time. It doesn't coalesce. In my head, that doesn't coalesce.
Yeah, I know what you mean, and to a lesser extent, because this was something that I never actually owned, but it was something my friend had, and I was still young enough to be entertaining the notion of playing multiplayer games with people, even though I wasn't super interested in them. But so I'd play it when I hung out with him,
Or that I'd have
and
played Red Dead Redemption before Black Ops had come out. Like, that in my head
yeah,
doesn't, that's not correlating, right? It's like, it's almost as if my brain has fabricated like its own little version of events that is definitely not true. And this is definitely how the Mandela effect happens all the fucking time. But I'm like, I've tricked myself into going, yeah, I was like 12 or 13. In my head, I'm like, no, you were like 10, you know, you were way younger. But, you know, it was the Wild Wild West multiplayer those days. And that was like my, like, if I tell you the amount of times where it's like, you know, I'm surprised nothing happened. Like, you know, I'm always surprised when I'm like, nothing bad happened. Because you hear all the horror stories of what happened to people. But it's like, I was just in Call of Duty lobbies. And don't worry, I heard the most horrible things, because of course I did.
heinous.
The most heinous things of all
Yeah,
time. Um, but I would literally be talking to people online as like a 12-year-old. And, you know, people would invite me to their games and stuff like that. And I had quote unquote online friends. And I was like, I didn't really like them. They just kept pestering me and inviting me. And I was like, I don't want to anger people on the internet. So I guess I'll keep joining like random lobbies. Uh, just random stuff. And I just look back at it and I'm like, I don't remember any of that stuff really. Who knows where any of those people are? I just remember watching a load of YouTube, trying to figure out how these zombies maps work, all that stuff, just trying to figure it all out. Being there at the start was kind of really interesting and a lot of fun. Um, And then, my multiplayer memories are jaded because I don't remember any of the terrible things that I probably heard as a kid. All I
Yeah.
know is, if you want to know one fun fact about me oversharing on this podcast to random strangers on the internet, is my mum was extremely overprotective of me, which I am very, very grateful for. But in my house, I wasn't allowed to swear or do anything. I had a bedtime of like 9:30 until I was like 15 years old, ladies and gentlemen. I was really fucking like, I was, So it's like, it always makes me laugh when people are like, oh yeah, it was the Wild West. I was like, I was just sitting there and it was like, little boy was like taught that like you should never swear ever, and I was like scared of even thinking of swearing, and then I'm just sitting there in a Call of Duty lobby and it's just like the worst
And
thing you
people,
could
you
possibly
just
hear of
hear the
all
worst
time.
thing
Yeah.
ever. Yeah,
Yeah. And
hysterical.
I just like, it just always makes me giggle when I'm just sitting there going, yeah, if I said like hell, I'd feel like the worst person of all time. And I was 12 years old. I'm like, oh God, those were the days. But I love Black Ops 1. I really do. It's a fantastic game. It's still my favorite Call of Duty game of all time, probably. Been playing it again. I played it again yesterday because I was trying to get an online trophy sorted. And I did it. And it brought back some memories. And I just stayed in the lobby for like an extra half an hour just playing it because I was like, oh, I remember when I liked these games where they just felt arcadey and fun. Like, I hate current Call of Duty. It's so bad. It's garbage. That's not even AI shy. That's just doesn't feel fun to play anymore. What happened? Remember when games were Fun Hunter? That's crazy. Also, UI, you just have the fucking minimap on the top left and your gun bullets on the right. Like, now it's like armor plates, health numbers, damage dealers, health bars, all this. I'm like, who cares? The screen goes red. I know I'm low. Like, why do we need all the health bars and armor pieces and all that shit? Garbage. Anyway, old
I
Call of Duty
remember
games
this
were great.
being the first game that had the ballistic knife.
I'm so sick.
Yeah, because by this point I had already developed the personality in these games where I didn't really care about winning, so I just
Oh,
made
100%.
life miserable for everybody else. So
I'm
I was
still like that. I'm still like that.
I
Yeah.
was I was the knife goblin and the stand next to you holding the active grenade guy.
Oh, hell yeah, dude. Like, I'm just thinking
So
of, I'm just like, in my head, I think of like, the party games I was talking about where it's like, in these party games, you'd like have gun game where you have to get a kill with a gun, you move over to the next one. And in that mode, if you knife someone, it demotes them to the
yeah,
previous
yeah.
gun. So I no longer cared about winning. I just cared about and this was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
this was my form of, everyone doing terrible things. This was my 12-year-old version of this is the worst thing I can possibly do to somebody. Is I just pick one person and just demote them all the time, like the whole time, and I'd just be sitting there going, "I'm an evil person," haha. Like that was my form of griefing, and like, that was my fun. Um,
Oh, yeah. It was hysterical too because my friend would occasionally set it to that mode, and like usually it was just kind of like my general way of playing was annoying, and then it became like magnified by 10
yeah,
because of
100%.
that ruling.
Just so many fun things.
Uh,
Like I say, Black Ops 1 has so much personality. All I remember, final memory of it, is I used to play a lot of S&D, Search and Destroy, which if you don't know is a game mode where everyone has one life and you have to either plant bombs or defend them. And when you die, you die. And all I remember is my favourite part of this was back in the day, because for some reason they stopped doing this and I don't know why. But in Black Ops 1, obviously it didn't matter because there was no such thing as a party chat on PS3, but on Xbox as well, party chats were disabled when you went in, so you weren't allowed to be in an Xbox party when you went in,
oh,
and everybody was talking on a team, and then when you died, both teams could talk to each other at the exact same time because everybody was just stuck in with
oh,
each other, the dead people.
that's
And
funny.
I'm just like, that's such a like, I miss that. I really do. I feel like a lot of, obviously, like I say, some people would say a load of terrible things that they shouldn't do. But the whole idea of having a whole communal thing of everyone being not allowed in parties, all forced in and actually talking to each other. And then just like, you don't get those kind of weird, quirky experiences of just having the random guy who blasts music through his microphone, the random guy
Yeah,
who is having a
yeah.
conversation with his, sister at the exact same time and he doesn't realize that everybody can hear it. You don't have those little quirky weirdos anymore. They're like, you just don't get that anymore. I think that's why I don't like multiplayer gaming as much as I used to. It's just because you don't get the little weirdos, Like, just I miss
Yeah.
that. Like, yeah, there were some terrible people that you just instantly mute or block, but then you also had the guy that would just be randomly singing the top 40 songs of the week just randomly through the microphone. Does he ask you if you want to hear it? No. Does he care? No. Like he's just gonna do it anyway. I kind of miss it. There's the 360 PS3 era was a vibe for multiplayer games where it was like, like I say,
It's
some of the
definitely what
worst, but
thrived
also
the
some of the best.
most.
Yeah. My God. What an era. Anyway, I promise I will not keep ranting about all of these this much. Hunter, talk to us about Puppeteer.
Ah, Puppeteer. This God, this is the kind of personality that like PlayStation needs more of. It was a Japan studio game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know if platformer doesn't feel like necessarily the right thing to call it, but it kind of has the same energy as a platformer. Essentially, it's all framed as like this puppet show that's going on, and
Mm-hmm.
the main gimmick is Utaro, the kid with the scissors. There is a puppet who lost his head, and he's trying to get his head back because it was stolen by like the Moon Witch, I believe, is how this story went. And essentially you're just out here collecting like new heads to wear. I don't think they did anything special. It was just kind of aesthetic purposes. They also served as like lives almost, or like hit points, I guess is rather the thing, where if you got hit you'd it like fall off, and then if it
Yeah.
disappeared you'd have like two or three other ones stored up. And it was just kind of this creative whimsy that I really appreciated at the time, where you know you don't really see a whole lot of games that are like, oh, stage production, puppet show kind of deal.
Yeah, yeah.
The main method of traversal is almost similar to kind of how the game Pepper Grinder that came out back in last year, where you're cutting through pieces of the background, so it's kind of almost like you're skating through water in a sense, rather than making jumps and stuff. A lot of the time they did a good job at the boss fights. I remember being really simple, but they did a
Mm-hmm.
good job at like um presenting them in a way that made it feel exciting,
Yeah.
where it was like, you're running away from like this dragon or whatever, but you're and it's like a semi quick time thing where it's like it's not out here telling you to press the square button when you should, but it was doing the thing where it's like, the claw or whatever is shiny and you hit the button that would naturally make sense to hit at the time kind of deal.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, this is one of those games that, you know, typical Japan studio like creativity that they don't have much of anymore. And I really wish there wasn't. I've only played this game the once, and I really wish there was another way to play it
Yeah, yeah, totally.
because, the PS3 streaming on the PS5 isn't very good.
Yeah.
And I don't. Yeah, and like same problem as the Lone Survivor thing from earlier. This was on the PS3 that it was not under my name, so I don't have access to it anymore anyway. I'd have to find a copy. I don't think it, and that's a coin flip on how expensive that would be these days
Yeah,
now.
totally.
I don't know. But yeah, it'd be nice of them to remaster that or something. I could see them doing that. They're busting out Freedom Wars this year.
Dude,
So
the only like the thing, everyone's always talking about, why is there no like will Sony ever make an actual effort to create an emulator for PS3? And in my head, I'm like, there's only so much longer that those server blades that stream PS3 games can actually live for, because they were made decades ago for like PS Now back in like 2011 or whatever. But it's like there's only so much time that Sony can go, hey, you can play your PS3 game streaming via the cloud. Like, there's only so much longer they can do that. So I'm like, one day
yeah,
they're
yeah.
gonna have to make a way for you for PS3 games to live on. And man, I hope they do, because there's so many great games on there that just need to just be allowed to live
Yeah,
somewhere
freed
else,
from
man.
prison,
Yeah.
like almost every, with the exception of Dead Space and Lone Survivor. Well, it's about 50-50 on mine here. Like Puppeteer,
Yeah.
not available anywhere else. Dragon Age, except for the PC, which truly probably the way you should play it, but I
Yeah.
don't particularly care. Can't play it anywhere else. Metal Gear Solid 4, Trapped. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Cool then. Right, where are we? What are we doing next?
Um, let's see here. Uh,
Me trying to remember
let's
what is
go
even
with
on my list anymore. Yeah.
yeah. I have to keep like clicking on to the thing and unspoilering it. That's why it always takes a second. Let's go with Uncharted 2.
Yeah, it's my favorite of the Uncharted games. Like that's the original trilogy. Uncharted 4 is my favorite. Of the PS3 Uncharted games, Uncharted 2 is my favorite. Um, I
Yeah.
just have a lot of memories of this game, mainly watching it because unfortunately for me, I didn't really get to play these games that much on the PS3. I really got to experience them properly in full using the Nathan Drake collection on the PS4, which is probably the way to play them, uh, in all honesty.
Yeah.
But yeah, so most of my memories with this game, the whole trilogy, are watching my dad play them because my dad played through the original Uncharted trilogy, front to back on PS3. And I just really loved Uncharted 2, and I still do. I'm a glorified Uncharted 3 hater, and I stand by it where I'm
Mhm.
like I despise Uncharted 3. I think Uncharted 3 is the worst Uncharted, and I don't think it's close. I
It
like
just
Uncharted 1 more than Uncharted
yeah.
3. I think there's some
It
cool
just felt
moments. The
like it was
plane is a
going through the
cool, yeah.
motions.
The plane's a good scene. I like that. It's
Yeah.
it's there's a reason it was in all the trailers because it was the best part of the game by far. And I love the flashbacks. The flashbacks are really interesting with young Nate and Sully. I like that quite a bit as well. But the rest of the game is just so boring, and it's like the desert isn't an interesting environment. The Jinn are not like an interesting opponent to go through fight through. The story
With
isn't
the
that
exception
interesting.
with the exception of the plane, I feel like half of the things that the high impact moments in 3 just felt like something that 2 had already done.
Whereas Uncharted 2 is like it is a like it always will make me go it'll always make me question what Sony were thinking with the Uncharted movie when they went, we'll copy most of Uncharted 3. That's what we'll do for our Uncharted movie. And I'm like, are you dumb? Like, are you stupid? I know Tom Holland's younger, but are you stupid to do that? Like, why
Mhm.
would you pick the worst one? When you've got like Uncharted 1 and 2 just sitting right there. Uncharted 2, though, I think is fantastic. I think that, you know, to me, Uncharted 2 is one of the first instances of the modern video game where it's like we're still
Yeah.
making those people are still making those video games. Naughty Dog is still making those video games. Uncharted
They have
1,
not stopped.
Uncharted 1 is very
It
close,
still has
but it's
some of
still
the
extremely
it has a
janky.
bunch of PS2 isms about it
Yeah,
almost.
because it has the entire chapter where you're on a dog awful jet ski and you're going up the fucking river, and that's
Yeah.
like really bad. But Uncharted 2 with the train set piece at the start of the game and the like, I think it's such a clever intro to the game of just having him lying in a chair on a train and then realizing that it's actually hanging off a cliff. And it's like, oh, that's such a Indiana Jones kind of
Yeah.
like cool moment. I adore it. Um, the characters in Uncharted 2 are my favorites. Obviously, I love Nate, Sully, and Elena, but
Ugh.
all the
Chloe's my favorite Uncharted
Chloe,
character.
Chloe, fantastic. What's his name? The British guy.
I can never remember his actual name. I just know he's Alistair in Dragon
Yeah,
Age.
I also know he's the guy that's in I'm in the Band from Disney XD because that's just what I remember. Characters Uncharted 2. Um, but I love him. He's such a fun character. Um, Harry
He
Flynn. Harry
really
Flynn is such a
yeah,
really fun character in terms of. I love that bank heist. That bank heist feels so Tomb Raider, and I just adore that second chapter, that little bit of a flashback, and the
yeah.
betrayal. It's all classic adventure movie, and it's like there's not a single part of Uncharted 2 where I'm sitting there and I'm going, oh, I don't understand why we're doing this. Like, oh, cool, we're doing it. Like the Yeti guys, I'm like, okay, we're
Mhm.
really doing mythical creatures again. Like, that's the only thing where I'm like, I wish we didn't do that every time. Which is why Uncharted 4 is my favorite because it subverts
Doesn't
expectations
have any of
by
that.
acting
Yeah.
like it's going to do it at some point and then never does, which I think is brilliant. Um, But I really love Uncharted 2, and I just remember watching my dad play it, and basically watching the entire game, watching my dad play it, and just going, "Oh, this game's great!" Like, I just love the characters. I still miss it. I still like. I want to go back and play Uncharted 4 at some point because it's like, man, was I done with Uncharted when Uncharted 4 was done? Like, I was like, brilliant. I'm done with that. I've had enough of that. But man, do I look back on it and go, man, in the span of like 9 years, we got five like pretty damn good adventure games that were just really fun and popcorny. And then when you look at the following 9 years of Naughty Dog, and you're like, you got Last of Us Part 2 and a bunch of remasters, and maybe we'll get into Galactic.
Yeah,
It's like, man,
maybe.
I kind of miss it. Like, there's
Another prime example of the fun being sucked out of PlayStation too.
yeah, 100%.
Like, you've Naughty Dog, like, I know Uncharted's not like the same kind of fun as Puppeteer, for example, but it's still, a more enjoyable and palatable experience than
Oh,
The Last of Us 2.
I still think it is though. I still think back to how my mind was blown when Uncharted 4 had the gameplay section of the Jeep and the chase and Nate jumping off of the Jeep, grapple hooking onto the car, and then being fucking like hanging in midair over the bridge, over the water. And I just sit there and I go, what a moment of E3 where I'm sitting there going, there's no way the game plays like this. And then I play it like 2 years later and it plays exactly like that. And I'm like, it's just like magic. And it's like, no offense to current Naughty Dog games. Like, I really liked The Last of Us Part 2. I will play into Galactic on day one because Naughty Dog have made some incredible games. But I'm not sitting it into Galactic and going, oh, that looks really fun. I'm just sitting there going, oh, that looks very much like another Naughty Dog game.
Looks like another one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like, if they had done a little bit of a cutscene and then showed a bunch of clips of her with her sound blade thing, just cutting up a load of people and a load of really fun gameplay, and then went from the creators of The Last of Us, that would have been a shocking moment where I would have been like, holy shit, they're showing actual fun gameplay. Like, that's what they should have done.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I look back at Uncharted 2 and I'm like, there's a reason why Naughty Dog kind of became the poster child for Sony. And I can see it with Uncharted where I'm like, that's just a damn fun video game. Like, it is, you might not like it and you might not be into it. You may not be into third person shooters, but you can't say that there's no personality there, that Nolan North's performance or any of the rest of the cast just doesn't scream Claudia Black, just like doesn't scream like fun. Like, it's a fun time.
Yeah.
It just is fun. Like, I don't know. I feel like, the Uncharted movie was dog shit, and I feel like it was because everybody was miscast. Like, every single person that was in that film was just miscast. Because I'm like, you could make a really fun Uncharted film. You could do that.
Theoretically, it should
Theoretically.
be really easy. It
Yeah.
should be, well, I don't know, maybe it's harder than we think because they haven't been able to make a good Indiana Jones movie since before we were born either. So,
True. But, I
Uh,
like Uncharted 2 a lot. I still do.
yeah, it was definitely my favorite of the PS3 games as well.
No, it's not even close. It's not even close. That one just stands
No,
above
no,
every single
like
one of them.
one was fun and quaint for what it was. Two was an improvement in every way, and much the same. I have much the same opinion of three as you do, where I'm like, why are we doing this
If I ever
one?
go back and replay the Uncharted trilogy, and that trilogy will be 1, 2, and 4. Like, that's where I'm going. Maybe the Lost Legacy as well, because Lost Legacy is pretty good. If you haven't played it, it's always a good. I'd recommend it. Anyway, next up, how many more have we got? I can see 1, 2, 3. Still got 4 left each. Jeez.
Oh my god.
Well, let's talk about a game that you have talked about in the past a little bit. So, Devil May Cry 4.
Ah, yeah. In a lot of ways, this feels like the forgotten Devil May Cry game.
Mm-hmm.
Just in the sense that, like, people don't really bring this one up very much these
Yeah, it's because they were
days.
too busy this
Like,
generation moaning about DMC.
yeah, like, even that gets brought up more in conversation regularly because it's like, oh, it's the one where they were being silly and westernizing the series.
Hell yeah.
Whereas directly before this, people were having a fit over them making a new main character.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like it's hilarious now since Nero's pretty well liked in 5, but people were not happy about him at first. And like me being dumb, like 10-year-old kid at the time of this game's release, I also was not super jazzed about Nero until I got older.
Yeah.
And then, as I got older, I realized, oh, I see what they were doing. And then they kind of cut his legs out from under him because they had to bring Dante back into the game when he didn't really need to be. But, DMC4, as far as just generate in the generation there, I think it will stand out as one of the most visually pleasing games of the generation to me, just because it's one of the only ones where they've let it that has color
Yeah, yeah.
injected into it. Like there's a whole couple of missions that take place in a forest that are like lush and green, and that's not a very common sight in PS3 games.
100%.
But yeah, in general, I think they did a bunch of they managed to click in a bunch of things with Dante's playstyle, where they took the style system he was working with in 3 and bring it forward to change on the fly and such. Whereas you were stuck to picking what you wanted in the mission before, and now you could, which opened it up to chaining together a whole bunch of combos. Nero's moveset had a really good foundation as far as what he was doing. He played different to Dante. It was still really satisfying. Glad they were able to bring it forward and flesh it out more with 5. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, overall, like I still think it's really good entry in the series as far as fun action and all of that. A lot of the boss fights are maybe the most consistently good in the series, perhaps, because there's a bunch of bosses in 3 where I'm like, ah, you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have one of those in this game, I don't think. But there's also not like I'm not a. This game also doesn't really have a Virgil either, so that's probably why people are sleeping on the cast that way. But in general, I think that it's still a really solid game in the series.
Hell yeah. Fair play. Any what we
Uh,
get? What next? 4 more. I'll try and make at
um,
least a couple of these quick, I promise, because we don't want to be here for another fucking hour and a half. Uh,
let's go with Thomas Was Alone.
uh, I love Thomas Was Alone. Still probably one of my favorite indie games of all time. Again, going back to like the era of Total Biscuit, Nerd Cubed, didn't know much about video games, was a tiny bit into PC games, but not really. I was playing Minecraft, but not much else. Um, See a couple of videos on a game, a couple of games, back with the original kind of indie boom. You've got like uh Binding of Isaac, Super Meat Boy, um, FTL, Fast All Night. There's like a couple of these
Braid and
games,
Limbo.
yeah, that kept coming out, and one of them that I saw was uh Thomas Was Alone, and I was like, okay, I'll watch somebody's playthrough, like a little bit of it, somebody going through it. I can't remember. I think it must have been Total Biscuit or somebody. And then I just remember hearing Greg Wallace's narration, and I'm like, that's the guy from Assassin's Creed, because the narrator Greg Wallace plays um what's his name in Assassin's Creed, Sean Hastings. So I was like, oh, I know that guy. Um, and I was just watching it. I was like, this is really interesting because it's just literally a bunch of blocks. It's literally a bunch of rectangles with a kind of melancholy soundtrack, and just some kind of just a narration. It's just Danny Wallace basically narrating the entire story. And I remember watching the first chapter and I was like, okay, I need to play this. Um, and so I didn't have so I played like probably like the first third of it on PC back in the day, and I was like, this is really good. And then I just never went back and finished it. And then a couple of years later, it was it was free on Plus for PS3, and I was like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna go back and finish that. So I literally just downloaded it on my PS3. This must have been 2014, maybe.
Yeah.
Similar kind of era, and I was like, maybe it was before the PS3. I can't remember if the PS4 was out or if it was before the PS3, and I had PS Plus for whatever reason. I can't remember. There were periods where I did have PS Plus, and I don't remember why. But it was just like, I think it was like the odd month here or there because I saw like a cool game was on it or something like that, and I was like, I
Oh
guess
yeah.
took a month. Get my dad to buy a gift card from the store or whatever, please. But yeah, and I just remember playing through it, and I'm like, probably one of the first indie games I properly knew about and played, and I still stand by it. Where it's like it's one of my favorite indie games of all time. If you have not played Thomas Was Alone, please play Thomas Was Alone. It is available everywhere. It is always available everywhere. It's on Switch, it's on PlayStation, it's on Xbox, it's everywhere. It's brilliant. I don't understand how Mike Biffle managed to write a story about a bunch of blocks and make it extremely heartfelt and just moving from just a narrator in the soundtrack. It's brilliant. I genuinely do think it's brilliant. I kind of miss, and I think it's like, it's very selfish to say this because it's like, indie devs are doing some incredible work and are making some wonderful games, but I kind of miss the early indie scene of extremely kind of basic video games, where it was just like, I'm just gonna make a game about some rectangles and, put all my
Yeah,
money into
yeah, I
just
know what you
writing a
mean.
heartfelt story. Or, Binding of Isaac, the original Binding of Isaac, just being, very flash coded with its animations and the way it works and stuff like that. I kind of I kind of miss the beauty of the basics, whereas now it's like, look at this great indie game. Its name is, Sea of Stars, and it's a whole fucking SNES RPG. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's where indies are now. But I do kind of miss the simplicity back of like the early 2010s of, you know, look at this. This is quirky, and one person made it in their bedroom, and then it just kind of blew up, and now Mike Biffle is doing all of sorts of other stuff. It's like I kind of miss that a little bit. I still think there's so many
Yeah.
fantastic indie games that there's no right to complain about it, and that if people can make bigger and greater games now, then hell yeah, more power to them. But I do kind of miss that kind of era of, look at this janky looking thing. It'll be one of your favorite
Yeah,
things that
yeah.
you play that year. I kind of miss that,
You can still find stuff like that. It's
but it's
just kind of
harder.
like, yeah, it's harder now, especially if you're only kind of like, if you only play indie games by word of
Word of
mouth,
mouth, yeah.
that then like you're probably not going to find stuff like that so much because now the ones that rise to the top
The pool's too big. Like
are,
that's the problem
yeah,
now. Is games like Thomas Was Alone. If Thomas Was Alone came out now, it'd get overshadowed by so many other different things. And it's like
yeah,
I miss when it was like
or
you know when you
or
could play
because
every
of
indie
all of
game. When you
the
could play like
yeah,
every major indie game that came out. That was back in the day. That's crazy.
or because of all of like the just kind of stuff that gets shotgunned on there without regard for quality. It's hard to like parse through that,
Oh
being
yeah,
like, oh, I've never heard of this one and it looks kind of jank. Do I want to? Do I want to see if it's worth the $10 or whatever?
yeah, 100%. I do kind of miss it, but yeah, Thomas Was Alone is one of my favorite indie games. If you haven't played Thomas Was Alone, do yourself a favor, play it. You can play some of Mike Biffle's other stuff as well. I think it's all pretty good, but I like
Yeah,
Volume
yeah.
quite a
Mike
bit.
Biffle's so good.
Volume's underrated in
Volume,
my opinion.
Volume's a good one.
Um,
His
his
John Wick
little,
game is all right.
and yeah, I did not play it. Uh,
I
I'm not
played
a fan of
like,
Tron either, so I'm currently out of the Mike Biffle sphere because I don't care for Tron. Sorry, Mike Biffle, but I don't care for Tron.
yeah,
But like
I played
Volume,
the first.
Subsurface Circular, and stuff like that, those little visual
Yeah.
novel kind of things that he did, there's some good stuff. What's next, Hunter?
You tell me.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. I guess I will. No, you can pick whatever you want. Let's go with well, Castle Crashers. Stick on the indie theme.
Yeah, all right. Castle Crashers must be like one of the other first indie games I had played, and like it's definitely indie in a completely different direction. Like this is straight up like Newgrounds
Yeah,
type of
Xbox
deal
Live
here.
Arcade. Like Xbox Live Arcade is what I
Yeah,
think of, like this, Meat Boy, stuff like that. Where it's like, yeah,
yeah, yeah. And the Castle Crashers was fun because this is one of the first instances where I'm like a full playthrough of like a 2D beat 'em up game, probably that I had done.
Mhm.
It's like I know that they were like a dime a dozen back in eras before I was born and stuff. So I'd see the dabblings when you'd find
Yeah.
an arcade machine or something just out at a pizza shop or whatever and have a go. But
As they did.
uh, but I think this is the first one that I had played front to back, and because it was just so wacky and weird and easy to play, because you only got like the couple of buttons that you got to worry about, it was something I was like, anytime I'd hang out with a friend and they'd be bored of whatever the Call of Duty or soccer or whatever they'd been playing, I'd be
Oh
like,
yeah.
"Oh, check this one out," and they'd be like, What is this?" But they'd be so compelling
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's so weird that would just be like, "I guess we're doing this tonight." Play through the game again. It's a really solid game as far as just being a fun time, especially with friends. It gets chaotic the more people you add,
Mhm.
as these things do. Um, I don't really recommend playing it on your own. It's one of those ones where
I
the
tried, it wasn't very good. Yeah, don't play it on
it's
your own.
it's not balanced in a way that like games in this genre later on would be. Like I was able to play River City Girls relatively easily on my own,
Yeah,
even
yeah.
though this kind of genre is meant to be played with a friend. But yeah, Castle Crashers, I do not recommend that way. And then the number or there was like a massive amount of content in this game too. If you just wanted to unlock stuff every time you played the game,
Oh yeah,
like
totally.
like every person unlocked somebody new. It was insane. Or like you'd find new weapons if you did this specific set of criteria or whatever. It was still one of those things where if you wanted to explore every facet of the game, there was a lot to find in a way that felt different than just go do all of this stuff in this specific list here.
Oh yeah,
So yeah,
totally.
Castle Crasher is always good for a fun time. I still like given the opportunity to show people.
Mm.
We'll bust it out just
It's
because
like
it's
that, and is it Battle Block Theater? Those are like the two games where there's like Battle Block Theater, and then there's Cloudberry Kingdom as well, where it's like
oh yeah, I remember
um
that one.
Cloudberry Kingdom was a massive that was like Mario Maker levels of torment before Mario Maker was a
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, like for a while there, like Cloudberry Kingdom and I guess a bunch of other random I think Cloudberry Kingdom and like Meat Boy plus I guess a bunch of other
Yeah.
copies, for lack of a better term, made me just believe that's like what the indie space was for that
Yeah,
a long
totally. Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Right. We're getting there, Hunter. Just a few more.
We are
5
getting
more
there.
games, ladies and gentlemen. 5 more games.
Um Alrighty, let's go with Assassin's Creed.
Assassin's Creed 2.
Yeah.
Ugh. Assassin's Creed 2. I don't know how many times I've replayed Assassin's Creed 2. I could probably if I would hazard a guess, it's probably something close to probably like 12 or 13 times I've played through Assassin's Creed 2. I adore Assassin's Creed 2. That was my brain rot when that game came out. I remember Assassin's
Yeah.
Creed 1 came out in 2007. Was it 2007 or was it 2008? I don't remember. AC1
I think it
was
was
2007. It was.
yeah.
Um and my dad picked it up at some point in 2008, and I watched my dad play it, and I was like, "Oh, this looks cool. Can I play it?" And my mum was like, "You better not let him play that game about stabbing people." And then my dad was like, "Look, there's a setting in the options menu that turns off the blood. So as long as you turn off the blood, your mum won't think that it's the game where you're stabbing people. So there you go." And I'm like, "Oh, thanks, Dad. You're the homie." So yeah, I just used to play the game with the blood turned off. And then all of a sudden it
Oh
became a
man.
kids game, right, guys? So that's what I did. So in 2008, I played that, and I really liked the original Assassin's Creed. And Assassin's Creed 2 is the first game that I remember looking stuff up on the internet, like looking, is Assassin's Creed 2 being made? Are we working on it? And then people were like, oh yeah, Assassin's Creed 2 there's rumors of Assassin's Creed 2 being set in Italy, and I'm like, oh, this is crazy. And it's weird to think that back in the day, I used to think like, oh, well, Assassin's Creed get a sequel, like we didn't like Assassin's Creed did well, but it didn't blow up until Assassin's Creed 2. So it's like I was sitting there going, "Oh, I wonder if it will get a sequel. Oh, what's it about?" And I remember seeing the original when they originally announced it, the Ezio's original with the his black cape, and I was like, "That looks goofy. Like, what
Yeah.
the hell is this? This looks dumb." Um, I don't know if
Mhm.
I'll vibe with it. And then I played it, and it's like, it's Ezio, greatest character, one of the greatest video game characters of all time. No, let alone
Yeah.
the best Assassin's Creed character of all time. I love Assassin's Creed 2. I think it's fantastic. Again, one of the first games where I realized how much a soundtrack actually impacts a video game and how wonderful it can be. Ezio's family, the theme of Assassin's Creed 2, which just became the theme of Assassin's Creed, period. Um,
Yeah.
what a fucking moment. I still vividly picture all the time that the scene of Ezio and his brother Federico up on the building at the top saying what times we live in, brother, may they never change, and the Assassin's Creed 2 logo coming up with that, and I'm like, what a fucking moment. Like the glow up from Assassin's Creed 1 to Assassin's Creed 2 in 2 years is like needs to be studied of like how they did that because
It's the kind of thing that just can't be done anymore. It's
it just
insane.
can't.
Like, yeah, just because of the scope of games and stuff, but like it's in madness. Like it went from proof of concept to one of the best games of the generation. Like I left it off of mine because I knew you'd have it.
Yeah, of course you did.
But um, again, I really liked Assassin's Creed 2 as well. Like my favorite in the series as well because I dipped after Ezio was done because it was Assassin's Creed 3 that made me realize I'm kind of tired of this now.
Yeah, yeah, same. And it's like, but Assassin's Creed 2 is a masterclass in just taking an original concept and just actually giving it a second try, which games just don't do nowadays. You don't get that second try. Um, and it's like, I jokingly say all the time, it's like, I didn't like Ghost of Tsushima, but give it a second try. Ghost of Yotei I might really like. But Horizon Forbidden West, I liked Horizon Zero Dawn. I loved Forbidden West. I was like, I really liked what they did with Forbidden West. I'm like, oh, that's sick.
Yeah,
Um,
it's something that I wish more things got the chance to. Like one of the most recent examples for me would be a Plague Tale Requiem.
yeah,
First Plague Tale game was cool, dramatic narrative game. Um, it was neat. And then Requiem, one of my favorite games in the past couple of years, still, I'd say.
totally,
So,
totally.
yeah.
Like I often think about Assassin's Creed 2, still do, and I'm like, what a fucking video game! It's so fantastic. Um, Assassin's Creed and Call of Duty. I always with the remake trend that has happened so frequently, and with how dog shit a lot of the modern entries of both Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed have been, I am so shocked that they haven't hit that bandwagon of let's just remake the old ones then and properly. Like they did Modern Warfare 1, but they never did any other Call of Duty game. And Assassin's Creed has never gone for we should just remake the Ezio trilogy. That'll literally
Did
sell
Modern
like
Warfare get
millions.
like a remake, or was it just
It
like
was
a
Modern Warfare
remaster?
remastered. It didn't yeah, technically it was on the
Yeah,
new
yeah.
engine, but
Oh, well, I guess their idea for
and then
that
they
was just
rebooted
branding
it,
them.
yeah.
Yeah, it was just branded to be the same thing. Now it would
But
be
people are always bitching about, oh, I don't like new Call of Duty. The fact that they just don't make an old Call of Duty and just go, there you go, gobble that
yeah.
up and buy stupid skins for that one then. Like it seems very dumb. And Assassin's Creed 2, I'm like, I know for a fact that one day the original Assassin's Creed and Assassin's Creed 2, if Ubisoft is still alive, will be remade. They just will. It is a fact that they will both be remade at some point.
I feel like even if Ubisoft burns to the ground, whoever picks up what's
We'll
left,
remake Assassin's Creed 1 and
as
2.
long as it's not the Embracer Group,
Yeah.
will remake those anyway.
I mean, they're remaking
Even
Black
if it
Flag
was the
right now.
Embracer Group, they'd
So
get something,
I assume Black
even if
Flag,
it wasn't
obviously
good.
they're remaking Black Flag because of trying to make some money off of whatever the failure of Skull and Bones was. But I can
Yeah.
100% see that when the sales of Black Flag remake go through the roof, because they will do, they'll probably start going, okay, let's remake some more Assassin's Creed games. And I think Assassin's Creed 2 will be on the top of their list. And I really hope that they just take the game that is already there, and this is 100% just a new coat of paint, make it look like an extremely attractive version of Assassin's Creed 2. And,
Yeah,
maybe
keep
figure
the
out some of the jank, get some of the jank out of there, but don't go, let's turn it
don't
into a modern Assassin's Creed with the stupid
yeah,
armor
don't make
systems
it
and
as
garbage like
big
that.
as yeah, don't make it a pseudo RPG, don't make it, you know, 10 times as big. I don't want any of that.
No. But yeah, I love
But
Assassin's Creed 2. I genuinely think it's like that and Red Dead are always neck and neck with being my favorite game of the generation. And I just sit there and I'm like, God, what a perfect video! Like genuinely, what a perfect video game. Whereas like I finished it, I was like, I have no real notes for that video game that I just played. Like I genuinely had a blast. Even the modern day stuff I really loved because they were actually this was the game where they
it
actually
actually built to
evolved and it had
something at
impact.
least.
Yeah. And then the
Yeah.
next couple of games they fucking fumbled it again. But like they started
Yeah.
making things interesting with the modern day storyline in Assassin's Creed 2. Because it was still kind of unique because it
It
hadn't
felt
been
like it was going
yeah.
somewhere at least. It was like not as cool because, you know, it being in Renaissance Rome is definitely cooler than being in 2011
Oh, 100%. But
wherever
I
it was
also think
taking place, but you
there was
know.
something interesting in my mind anyway of if it was just hey this is a game that's set in like when people always make this argument where they're like get rid of the future stuff and I'm like I can understand it to an extent because like oh yeah look at this but I'm like I also did appreciate back in the time the idea of being someone using this weird future tech to go back and experience it like there was an interesting thing where it's like I kind of like the idea of it being like them actually but again this is when they were actually doing something where I'm like okay I can see like
Yeah, yeah, they created like genuine moments like at the end of the game when, you know,
yeah yeah
the who is Desmond
yeah,
deal
exactly.
there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the breakout scene and stuff like that, and using it to like, yeah, there's some interesting stuff there. But no, I love Assassin's Creed 2. I still think it's fantastic. I don't think it needs a remake. I think it still holds up. I still think you can very easily go and play the Ezio trilogy and have a great time with the Ezio trilogy. But um, sometimes I just look and I'm like, in the same way that like Assassin's Creed Unity was such a glow up for Assassin's Creed in terms of how it looked. I'm like, God, could you imagine going around Venice with like 2024 goggles on? I'm like, oh, because it still
Oh
looks a
man.
bit. It still has a bit like Red Dead Redemption 1. It still has that PS3 looking kind of quality to it, where we're going for realism, but we don't have the power yet to make it look as nice as we'd like to. So you still got the blocky buildings and the janky kind of side
Yeah.
characters where everyone's got one of five faces, stuff like that. But it's still wonderful. I love it. Right. Hunter, we are going to go with. Let's go with. Uh, wow, is it only two left?
I believe so.
Valkyria Chronicles.
Oh man. So Valkyria Chronicles is one I didn't properly get into until later, but I give it the nod here because I was never including it in the PS4 3x3 that we did for the reason that it came from this generation, so now is the time to talk about it.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was also like one of the first couple of games I remember us having. I just didn't get into it all the way at that point. It was like we had Metal Gear Solid 4, random FIFA game, whatever year it might have been. Modern Warfare and then Valkyria Chronicles was like the one that I grabbed when I was tired of replaying MGS4 for a little bit.
Mhm.
And, you know, I really liked this game when I finally played it years later. Like, it's got such a cool visual style to it. It's one of those things where I didn't hear about it often, but every time I did hear about it, people are like, "Oh, this game is great."
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, it really is. Like it's a cool it's kind of like I'd wager it's like a strategy RPG is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, totally.
You've got your platoon of people and you move them as like units to do whatever. And it's all very I think it's very engaging that way as far as the gameplay
Dude,
there, but it was
sorry.
what's up?
I've just you saying platoon, I have just realized, dude, it's been 9 years. I've just realized that Splatoon is a pun.
Are you serious?
No, I just thought it was Splat Cartoon, not Platoon.
I think this well
Bro, my eyes have I've just like gone into the third dimension, dude. What the fuck? I have not.
oh my god. That's the
Oh my god. Oh, I'm so
Like the
sorry for that
scene in
tangent. Uh,
Strange where his soul got slapped out of his body or whatever. That's hilarious.
Dude, I am
But
so sorry for that tangent, but I'm just literally like, as soon as you said platoon, I'm like, oh, platoon is a word. Wait, Splatoon, that's what that meant? I'm like, I just thought it meant fucking squid cartoon gun thing. Like, no.
oh, that's hysterical. Uh,
God, I'm so stupid. Anyway,
but yeah, the thing I really like about Valkyria Chronicles is its story and characters. Like, it does a really good job at it being a war story without only focusing on the yes, war is bad. It
war never changes.
yeah, there's still aspects of that in it, but it's the point that it makes really at the end of the day is that good and bad things happen, you know, at the same time. So like it's very bad that this war that they're fighting is happening, but the people they met, joining up this militia, all very important, and they're better people for knowing each other, kind of deal.
Mm,
Um, and I think that's a thing that gets lost on a lot of these games that are like, yes, full hog on the darkness kind of deal.
oh yeah.
Yeah, but very good game. I liked its characters. I wish the 2 and 3 would become easily available. I played 4 when that came out, and I thought it was good. I'd like to try the other two, but they were PSP games, and one only came out in Japan.
No, damn.
So
Fair enough.
yeah, so it's like sitting here waiting on that to be one of the lucky dice rolls of the um
When Sega
classics
runs out of things to
collection.
port, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. It is owned by. I forgot about that.
Yeah, they love porting everything eventually, so give them a
They'll
chance.
get to it.
Okay then. Penultimate. What do you want me to talk about on
Uh
to two games that I probably don't have too much to say about
yeah.
because we've
Let's
talked
go
about
with
these two before.
Sly 4.
Yeah, Slyfall gets so too much hate. Have I said that before on the podcast? Never. No sir. No
Never ever.
sir. Here's the thing, right? Is I Sly 4 means a lot to me as someone that waited the whole generation basically to get a Sly game. And I still like it, and I still think still think it's overhated. I think it's not as good as Sly 2 and 3 or Sly 1 really. I think it still is the weakest of the game of the games, but I still appreciate what they did. I appreciate the Sanzaru went out of their way to make it and do a decent job at it. I like it quite a lot. It to me, the reason that it's on this list is it's because it kind of closed the book on my childhood in a way, because it was like 2013. I was like, 50, nearly 60, and it was like, I'd been waiting a long period of my childhood for a fourth Sly game because Sly 3 ended on a cliffhanger, and I kind of got it, and I liked it, and I had a lot of fun with it. And then obviously it had a cliffhanger at the end of this one, and I was like, oh, we'll get a Sly 5. Obviously, we never will. But it was nice to kind of, you know, have that closure in a way, have that kind of extra game and enjoy it. And I think it's a fun time. I wish it got a port off of the PS3. I wish that, like The Last of Us and plenty other, think of all the games that came out in 2013, like, Bioshock Infinite, The Last of Us, um, Saints Row 4. Everything got ported the next year to PS4 by like default. Everyone was just like, yeah, we
Yeah,
understand it was the end of the
everyone was.
generation, port it up. And Sony was just like, no, we'll
Not
only
you
do that
though.
with Last of Us. Only with The Last of Us. No other game will do it. I'm like, fair enough, you do
So
you.
weird.
Um,
But
I
so
think it
I
would have
haven't.
benefited from it, to be honest. Like being
Yeah,
one of the only
probably
PS4
because
games, like yeah, it would have probably done a lot better.
yeah,
People
people
would
would
have
have
been
grabbed it more
more
because
willing. Yeah,
they had already played The Last of Us at that point, probably. So having
Sanzaru
something else.
Sanzaru were up for it. They were like planning on it, but they just never came to
Yeah,
fruition. It's a shame. But yeah, I like that game quite a bit. I mean, I'll give a runner up, like didn't make the list, but I will also mention it because it would have taken this slot if I didn't want to talk about why Sly 4 meant something. Little Big Planet, I still think
oh yeah,
is quintessentially um PlayStation, and I think it was for PS3. It's like we never really had that for PS4 or 5. Obviously they tried with Knack, but um
yeah. Like I'd say the like because of how long it took, it's weird to say this, but like the breakout new character of the PS4 generation is probably Aloy, and that happened like 4 years into the generation.
Yeah, probably. And it's weird because at least for me at the moment, I feel like PS5 is Astro, even though Astro started on PS4. So it's like, it's weird how that's kind of happening. But Little Big Planet is fantastic. I love Little Big Planet. It's such a brilliant little
Yeah.
game from Media Molecule. It's just filled with personality and fun, and can't help but love it. So it's like I wanted to put Sly 4 meant a lot for me as like closure, but then Little Big Planet is just so quintessential. Like when I think of PS3, I think of Little
The
Big
thing
Planet.
with
That's
Sly
what I think
4
of.
that's interesting to me, at least, just as like from an observation standpoint, is because it took the whole generation to get it. Almost seems like a game out of time in a way,
Yeah, 100%.
because like
All the Ratchet
Jack
games
got
were
left.
done. Yeah,
Yeah, Jack got left behind. Ratchet had already had a new trilogy by then and closed the book on that, so it was like the last one.
yeah, and the Sly trilogy was the first trilogy that actually came out.
Yeah,
Um,
that's insane.
of the HD collection, so it was like weird, right? So it's like, yeah, a load of things, and it's like, yeah, was it the best game? No, but was it still fun? Yeah, I feel like people love to hate when something's just fine. Like I'm like, is it the best? No, but that doesn't mean it's bad. I don't think it's bad. Some people don't like the
Yeah, I
plot
feel like
twist. I admit, I think the plot twist is a bit dumb as well. I'll happily admit that. But did it stop me from enjoying the game? No. It was a fun time. I just wish there was a better version of it to play because both versions, the Vita version and the PS3 version, are serviceable, but
not
could have done
great.
with a port. Yeah, could have done with some love. Okay, Hunter, take us home. God of War 3.
Oh, God
Your
of War
final pick.
3. Ah, this one was this one's interesting because it was like one of the ones that when it came I didn't get to play this until like 2 years after it came out, I don't think, but like people were going nuts for God of War 3 when it dropped as being like one of the reasons to get a PS3 if you didn't have one. And as far as like what it did for the or as far as like where it stands in the series, I think the original trilogy of games all do different things better than one another, I'd say. Like
Yeah,
first game's story was the best amongst them. Two, I feel like, was the most generally well put together one. The thing that shined the best in three was just the feeling of the combat and the gameplay. They managed to make feel really good in this one
yeah,
in a way that like something that they kind of toyed with in the previous two was giving Kratos weapons that weren't the blades of chaos. Like you'd get like a little sub weapon
yeah,
hammer or spear in two, and they always felt kind of tacked on. And in this one, they did a you had other weapons that were functionally similar, where they were still like blades on strings that you were throwing at people,
yeah.
but they tied the magic moves that you're unlocking to they made it like weapon specific, so it was a good little melding of the two different aspects of your offensive arsenal in that way that I think they did a good job with. And there was at least one weapon unique to the not being blades on strings kind of thing with the Estus that you unlock about halfway through the game. They were the big gauntlets that he's punching people with that were, you know, fun and an actual change of pace from the combos you're doing in a
Mm.
way that made it a lot of fun to do. And like as far as the crazy presentation of these games, I feel like God of War 3 did it was the most fully realized by that point. With it arguably even still because they took a different direction with the newer games in a way that you're not climbing the back of titans to, stab them in the neck or whatever
No,
in Ragnarok. That stuff's kind of all happening in the background, whereas you're, you know, still kind of actively taking a part in that in this one. So, kind of like the most fully realized vision of the original notion of the series, I'd say, in that regard.
yeah. I never got to play God of War. Um,
Yeah.
No, my dad didn't play it either, so it was the game. It was a series that passed us by until 2018, where I was like, wasn't originally planning on getting it, and then it got so high reviews. I was like, guess I've got to see what this is about then, and play God of War 2018. I was like, yeah, that's pretty good. Not enough to go
It
back
was
and
one
play
of
like them
it
again.
was one
Like,
of those things where when the 2018 one dropped, I was interested in it because I liked the other ones well enough, but like I had also played Ascension at that point because I think I got it for Christmas or something. I'm like, "Ah, that one wasn't that good."
mm,
Like, so I wasn't left like wanting another one after that. So, but when they dropped it, I was like, I don't got anything else I'm playing, so sure. And I wasn't expecting 2018 to be as good as it was. But yeah,
yeah, totally. It's
the
yeah.
original games aren't really your thing
I know they're not my
anyway. I
thing
would
because
say, yeah,
they're just like hack and slashy kind of hacky slashy stuff.
yeah,
Um, but I respect them. I respect them for what they are. Pretty cool. At least watching them, I'm like, what watching people whack people and climb things and do massive. I'm like, that's fun. That's fun stuff.
yeah, yeah. It was like one of those things. Like it was fun getting my Greek mythology education from dual parts Kratos and dual parts the Percy Jackson series.
Oh, to be honest, that's like
It
why
was
that's why at least with the older games, right, with Assassin's Creed and stuff like that, I used to love Assassin's Creed because I used to learn a lot about the periods that they were set in because they weren't super like they weren't they
it
were
wasn't
generic,
super
but they weren't
saturated
super
yet
saturated. They weren't. They
because
didn't
like
go with. They didn't go like nowadays when they're like, oh yeah, we're doing
it feels like
ancient
everything
Egypt.
does Greek and
Yeah, we're doing ancient
Norse
Egypt. We're doing
mythology all the
Greece. We're gonna
time.
do Norse mythology, and I'm like, you're just going for the
It's
most
like
boring ones
uh,
right now. You
yeah,
know?
it's like I could pick one of like one for each in my like early years. Like Yu-Gi-Oh really liked ancient Egypt. God of War was the Greek thing, and I'm struggling to think of a Norse connection. But
It was
uh
probably there, but like, it's like
yeah.
when you're like, oh, we're gonna make games based on periods of history, and they were just like, yeah, let's just do the Italian Renaissance. Why? I'm like, that's such a because like, yeah, what the fuck else was doing stuff like that? That's like you made the Italian Renaissance cool for me. I'm like, hell yeah, that's such a sick
Yeah,
period of
yeah.
time.
Being a video game enthusiast, even like to the extent that I could be as a child, was hilarious going to school because I'd know things that even the adults didn't think I had any business knowing.
Yeah,
Like, how do you even know that word?
yeah, it's
Kind of deal.
like I said, it's fun stuff, and it's like feudal Japan again is a cool idea, but it's like again, I'm like that's already been done now with Ghost of Tsushima and stuff like that. I'm more like Hexay. I'm more interested in because I'm like, oh yeah, witch trials stuff like that. That
God, I
sounds
hope
fun.
they make it that far. At that point,
Fingers
like,
crossed,
please make it to the witches, and please make it to
please.
the witches with enough gusto to make it good.
Oh, we can dream. We can dream.
Uh,
Let's wrap it up with Red Dead Redemption. I haven't talked about this one before in my life. It's like my favorite. That and Assassin's Creed 2, my favorite two PS3 games of all time. What a game, dude! I'm
s-
replaying that as we're
speaking of cool
recording it.
period pieces,
It genuinely like I. No offense to Rockstar writing in the past. I think Rockstar writing is very good. I think GTA writing is very good. But Red Dead and Red Dead 2 proved to me that the Rockstar writing team could actually write in the fact that it's not just all dick jokes and culture stuff. It's just like it's actually a really well written um thought
story.
provoking story about,
Yeah,
the death of the old west, and I absolutely adore it. The game just knows how it just lives. Like that's the thing is that world. It just kind of you just kind of you take the role of John Marston. They don't have to do any introductions. They don't have to conversations. Just kind of come and go. They don't go okay, and that's the end of this bit, and this is the end of that. Like characters just weave in and out of the story naturally. It's just like I just love everything about Red Dead One. I genuinely do. Now, do I think Red Dead Two is the better game? Yes, I do. I think that it's again to me in my head it is an Assassin's Creed 2 jump where you go back to Assassin's Creed 1 and you're like, wow, it's a bit barren here. You go back to Red Dead 1 and you're like, yeah, there really was just those main quests, wasn't there? Because there's literally nothing else here, whereas Red Dead 2 is literally like a living world. Now, that can
that's
be to
true.
its
I feel like
detriment
we
at
at least
times.
with Red Dead Redemption 1 to 2, the counter argument for that is one feels like it's fighting against you playing it a little less
Yes,
than
100%.
two does.
Yeah,
Where
100%.
like if you want one that's the more enjoyable hands on the controller experience, I think it's probably still the first game.
Oh, 100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. And I just, like I say, there's just so many likable characters. It's just such an engrossing tale. Um, I still stand by. I think that both John Marston and Arthur Morgan are quite possibly two of the best protagonists in video games ever made. Um,
Yeah.
they are not good people, and the game never writes them as if they are. But redemption is in the name, and I think the moral of Red Dead is in essence that you know that there is a there is a path to redemption no matter where you like come from. Like there's a way for and especially in the old west, that there's a way for these kind of heroic moments to actually happen. And it's like I really love the story of Red Dead 1. I really do. um I just sit there and now don't get me wrong, does it have its moments where I'm like, fucking hurry up? Yes, I'm looking at you, Mexico, why do you take so fucking long? Like I'm like, you know but the first third, I just sit there and I go, God, it's so well crafted with the Marshall, Nigel West Dickens, Bonnie McFarlane, Seth, Irish, where I'm just like, there's so many larger
Yeah,
than
yeah.
life characters that just come and go, that are just really interesting. Um, and the second half of like Dutch and stuff like that. And I don't know, I know that we will get a Red Dead Redemption 3 one day, and it'll probably be in the 2030s, and I'll probably be getting close to fucking 40, and I'll cry. But they're just so well made, and I just love that. One it still stands to this day. It still stands up on its own 2 feet, regardless of Red Dead 2. And they're
I
just a
agree.
really nice duology.
Mm.
I really like just having these two games that are very much intertwined, that you can go through both of them and basically, get something out of it. They did not Neither of them kind of invalidates the other, which I like. I think it's like,
Nah, nah. At most, like two recontextualizes one in a way that makes everything even more sad.
oh, 100%. Yeah,
Yeah,
100%. Um but yeah, I love Red Dead 1, I think. And now
yeah.
it's available everywhere. It's finally free. As of like, this
Yeah,
is the
yeah.
first
This
time that we
one's
can go, hey, it's
free,
free.
and I haven't played Red Dead 1 in forever, so, probably have a go at that sometime this year,
And it's good
given
on
that
PS4.
I've got
It's yeah.
3 months to do nothing really.
Yeah,
So,
you can literally play it anywhere. If you're on Xbox, you can play it via backwards compatibility. If you're on PlayStation, on Switch, it's available on Switch, and it's basically as good as it's like the best version of the old console kind of hardware, because it's the most consistent, which is good.
yeah.
PS5 and PS4 are both 60 FPS now, and PC is in its own little world where you can do whatever you fucking want. Um, Although you have to mod in the fucking PlayStation buttons if you want to play with a PlayStation controller like I am, because of course, too much to ask for. But
Yeah,
fantastic game.
yeah. The thing about this one, because like I don't really care about Grand Theft Auto very much.
Mm,
They are games that at most I would screw around for a little bit and then get bored.
yeah,
The thing about which I guess they're good for that and people really enjoy doing that. The thing about Red Dead that I think it does really well is the world that it creates. Even if like, with two existing in that world will give you grief
yeah,
just by
100%.
trying to do any given task. It's still interesting to be in. I still liked being in the either game's world in a way that Grand Theft Auto does not
The
have.
character piece, which is what I think is
Yeah.
really, and the GTA is also a character piece, but the difference is I feel like Red Dead has interesting characters.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not super interested in modern day gangsters because they're sauceless.
Yeah. Whereas it's like there are so
Cowboys
many
have pizzazz.
there are so many characters in this game where it's like, there is a part like, we'll never, it's like, it's so good for what it was. And it was at a time where it's like, oh, again, I can see how Red Dead Redemption impacted a lot of games going into the 2010s and the 2020s, where it's like, this was the first time that Rockstar, at least in my opinion, I think Red Dead Redemption is one of the first examples of Rockstar actually going narrative first. Um, And I think I was like, again, that was a shift that very much went into the 2010s and 2020s. Is narrative. A lot of games do go narrative first nowadays.
Yeah, I wouldn't be
Um,
shocked if like even like Naughty Dog was like, hmm. I don't remember the story of how long that Last of Us was gestating or anything being like, but
it
being
would have
like,
been
oh,
just
let's try
after Uncharted
maybe
2, so 2009. So it would have been within the first year of Last of Us dev. Would
uh
have been announced. It was announced by the time that
mm, okay.
Last of Us was in dev. But it is interesting because when you look at stuff like GTA 4, and it's like, yes, they all have stories, but they're all very much like you drive around in cars and you shoot people and you get the police on
That's
you and
all
stuff like
like
that.
just well mafia movies really.
And it does suffer from the classic PS3 honor systems of do they really matter? No, not really.
No.
I think Red
Still
Dead
have to
2 does
press
that a
X to
lot.
sprint.
Red Dead does that a lot better. Red Dead 2 is a lot better at the morality system than Red Dead 1.
Yeah.
I'll give it that. In fact, I think Red Dead 2 is quite possibly one of the only games with a morality system where I'm like, oh, that actually did make a difference when you got to the end of it. I'm actually rather surprised. So
Yeah. The rest of them are either like, with Infamous where it's like,
good
well,
ending, bad ending, make your
we
choice.
want to have options, but there's one that we wrote it for and one we didn't.
Yeah. Good luck,
Yeah.
kids.
And then
And I mean,
other
let's be real
games
here.
as far
Let's
as
all be real. The game's called Red Dead Redemption. You're supposed to play the honorable way. That's the way you're supposed to play that game. Um, I still stand by
they
that
were
Red
like,
Dead 2.
if you're
Yeah,
gonna be like evil, be evil at the beginning and gradually become less evil.
yeah. But yeah, it's all fun and games. Right, there you go. 18 games, ladies and gentlemen. See, we don't need Cal to make it over 2 hours for a 3x3 episode.
Oh my
Just that
god, this is as
simple.
long as one of
Our
they are
normal ones.
usually.
Yeah.
It's
Oh well.
insanity.
Yeah, been fun though. Been fun. What are your
Yeah.
favorite PS3 games that we missed? Let us know. We're always wrong, and you're always right. So there you go. Next week, ladies and gentlemen, who knows? I'll give you a little hint. If you made it to the end of this one, then you can know this one. You can know this for free. This is the final of the pre-records. Hello, we're still in December. The Christmas decorations are still behind me. I'm trying to hide them with the lighting, but this is the last of the pre-records. So starting next week, we are back to being semi live within a week, I guess. So who knows?
Unless Nintendo announces something and we have
Unless
to
Nintendo has
emergency
announced a direct in
record.
unless they've announced Switch 2 like last week or whatever, and now this is out of date. Who knows? Let us know, guys. How out of date are we now? Did you guess the correct order of which order we recorded these episodes in? You'll never guess it. I don't remember. That's how
Was a good point.
we did it. I'll put our links on screen right now. You can follow us on Twitter or Blue Sky if you want to keep up to date with what we do outside of the podcast. Any New Year's resolutions, Hunter, now that we are in 2025?
I'm not really a resolutions person.
Neither am I, because I always say that I'll make them and then I never do, or I don't. Like I remember this year, I was like, I'm gonna start drinking less soda. I think I've drinking more soda this year than ever before because of just stress or other things. I'm like, that's not good.
Like I'm not gonna besmirch people who do or set their resolutions and try to make good on them or whatever, but it's more of like one of those things. I'm very much the well, if I want to do that, I will kind of deal. Yeah.
No,
it's like
I agree.
Sure, I could say every year that maybe I should be a little less lazy or something, or a little more sociable, but
But you never do. That's the thing.
It's an evergreen statement.
Like me saying I want to do more exercise or I want to, do more of this, and it's like, are you actually going to, or are you just saying that so you feel slightly better about going into a new year fat, Ethan? Is that what you're gonna do? Like, it's all fun and games. But yeah, I hope you're enjoying the new year. Hope something terrible hasn't happened within the first week or whatever, like the Nintendo Switch 2 reveal. All right, well, hey.
Yeah.
I just remember last year was really bad because wasn't there was the earthquake in Japan within on the first day of the year, and I'm like, oh god, we're really doing that?
Yeah.
Like, man,
first week of January is not great for things.
No, it's not.
In the past 5 or 6
God,
years.
I don't know why I asked that because it's election. Oh no, God, I hope that doesn't age terribly. Oh well. It's fine. No one will get this far, and they'll all have laughed at the platoon bit earlier. It's fine.
Oh my god, it'll be hysterical that's probably the bumper, and it's got nothing to do with the PS3.
Yeah, the PS3 episode. It's still a Nintendo bit at the start, dude. Don't worry about it. It's all good. Anyway, that's it for this week, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you ever so much for hanging out with us this week. It's been really fun. We'll be back same time, same place next week for goodness knows what. But until then, have an awesome rest of your week. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Bye.
Toodaloo.